We're live, and it's just about to turn 7. On what? Not on there. It's not on there. Now it is. Now it is. Councillors, directors, staff and members of the gallery, welcome you to council meeting for Tuesday the 19th of January. And in doing so, acknowledge the life of Patrick Templar, who's the young motorcyclist who died as a result of injuries incurred on our street the other day. And no matter what the circumstances, it's always a very sad occurrence. And I know the CEO has undertaken to do our part in responding to that. There's been some elected member inquiries, but just to note that at the start of our meeting, a very sad loss, young bloke. Also acknowledge the Kaurna people and to acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, their beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Read you also the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. On leave, we have nil. Apologies, nil. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any? I didn't think there were any. Might be in there. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Somebody wish to confirm the minutes of Tuesday the 15th of December as a true record of the meeting. Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
You, do I have a seconder? Councillor Rip, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you.
To the debate. Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Public question time at item 6. We have all of the numerous rules for public question time, and we have our 15-minute time allocation. Do we have any questions from members of the public who'd like to come forward? And for the purposes of the minutes, state your name and address.
Mark Standen, 7 Wilson Street, Nailsworth.
You have 3 minutes if you need it.
Thank you. I noticed in the agenda this evening there's a report on the Ngunnawirra Prospect Gardens, the eastern, particularly the eastern end of the park, which is under consultation. I noticed it's being referred to as a play space, whereas in the past it's always been referred to as a reserve, and that reference is still on the City of Prospect website. If you search the park, it comes up as a reserve. Has the City of Prospect officially recategorised the eastern section of Prospect Gardens, Ngunnawirra, as a play space? If not, what is the official description of this eastern section of Ngunnawirra?
Thank you. I'll see if there's an answer available.
Yes, through you to the Director.
Through the Chair, there has been no official reclassification. It's still known, that parcel of land is still known, the entire parcel is known as Prospect Gardens, Ngunnawirra. We were simply using that term to describe particular areas of the reserve. So it's still officially known as a reserve, but at times we may refer to the play space, the tennis courts, just to differentiate different areas of within that reserve. But it's still officially called the reserve.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Can I add a little bit to that? Is the play space...
Question. Okay.
Yes, is the play space an area within the eastern part, or is it referred to as that entire eastern part?
Through the Chair, the play space will be the area that's constructed that has constructed as a play area. So it won't be that entire eastern component of the building east, for example. That won't be all known as a play space. But when it comes to areas such as dog control, it'll be the actual softball area would be classified as a playground or play space.
That completely covers my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask if there's any further questions from the gallery, but I think you are the gallery. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming.
I'll wear it.
That concludes public question time. Petitions, we have nil. Deputations, nil. Questions without notice, are there any? There are not. We'll move on to reports for decision. Item 10.1 is the first one, noting the additional information handed out by the staff just to further clarify the proposed easement C from the title drawing that's in front of you now. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation as presented on pages 1 to 2? Ward councillors, anyone else? Councillor Nguyen, happy to move it.
Good to get it on the table, thank you.
Wish to speak to it at all? Can only speak in response, that's all. Yeah, in summary, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Any further debate? There being none, it's hard to know how you would wish to sum up. No need if you don't want to.
I support the recommendation, and I hope that when we take it to consultation, it's clear, and when we address some of the issues, I hope that the information is clear so that community members know exactly what we're talking about. How often do we get an upgrade of a reserve? We often talk about wanting to upgrade play spaces, reserves, garden, and this is an opportunity where we don't have to find the resources, where the developers are, happy to look at paying for it. So let's take it to consultation, see what the community says, and hope it comes back in favour so that we get an opportunity to improve and upgrade this Prospect estate.
Okay, thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2, Prospect Gardens, Nanu Wirra Play Space Upgrade Round 3 Consultation Outcome. Recommendations on page 11 to 12. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
Yes, to add in a few things. I did ask a question that I will say that I asked here that has happened with two of our other parks in the last couple of days, with questions that I did ask from the director about play equipment. Was there any disability friendly play equipment? And I've got his answer, and I have to say it's an amazing answer. So putting that to one side, and particularly the bottom clause 3 or recommendation 3 that talks about dogs and the dog area, but in the report it points out quite specifically that that will be looked at later as a different issue again about dogs and parks, in this park in particular. So even while I'm moving this whole lot, I'm moving it with the knowledge that the dog part of it's not settled as yet, or in my opinion, it's not settled as yet. And the way this reads, it's not settled as yet. I personally believe I'd be recommending it that dogs don't get near play equipment and whatever, but that's me personally. But in the big picture, for that area, for the Buchanan and Mawson Street and the various ones around, there's always been that chance. If you want to go and play with your tin lids somewhere, you have to cross the main North Road and through the lights and end up over Memorial Gardens, or you've got to go right up to Broadview or somewhere else. And this opens it up, and I would say 30 years of my knowledge after Christina put the 6 trees, we put 8 down, but 2 have died. And the name, as you all know, I think with Nanu Wirra, is the native pines in the forest, and they were the trees that grew there with the peppermint gums. So I think it's going to be good. I think the recommendation and the way of looking at it, I still have a personal concern that some of the equipment that we're lacking in some of these playgrounds have, and I'm not experienced enough to say what, but have things that maybe with disabled people that they can be on a bit of a swing and physical equipment. I do accept what the director said me about the attitude to the play, but with some sort of physical thing, that a little tin leg goes with a disability, and they haven't got something that they can go on that other kids have. So I have that concern, and hopefully we can keep looking at that. But in the picture, I think as a reserve, that it's a great area for families to enjoy and come. The barbecues, the tennis courts, the pétanque, the soccer, and all those things. It's a lively little area for those people around. So I will be recommending it unless someone comes up with something different.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it?
Well, obviously, to back up Councillor Harris's comments there, and I do also wish to thank the staff. I know there's been quite a bit of consultation and works into this, so I do thank you for listening to the community and being prepared to go back and further hear where you wanted something clarified, as I believe we will be with the dogs on leash area. So I do thank the staff for that. Also like to point out that point 4 states that council thank all residents who provided feedback to the community consultation and that advises those people of council's decision and program to complete the project. Do we do that with all our community consultation? I'm sorry, I should have said a question.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, typically, Simon?
For the Chair, all consultation undertaken through the Infrastructure and Environment Department, generally, yes, we do respond, and we normally put it as part of the resolution to confirm that council's happy with that.
Yeah, that's actually good to hear, because I would like probably for us to think about, and maybe it's up to another elected member if they wanted to add anything extra, but really, in my opinion, this should be done across the board, whether someone signed a petition, whether someone's given feedback on Facebook, whether someone's called and offered feedback, we should really be acknowledging all feedback received. So I think that's great that we're doing that, and it's great if that's the case with the infrastructure area, but I think it needs to be something that we're doing right across the board. It could be if we're writing back to people. I think if people submit feedback, and particularly around budget time, we always want people to submit feedback. If people submit feedback to the City of Prospect at another point in time during the year and we don't acknowledge it, then they'll be sitting there thinking, why should we submit feedback at another point in time? So I think it's great we do it here, but I would really hope that across our council area we can do it in other mediums and programs as well. So I'll just leave that there, but very happy with this report.
Thank you. Any further debate? Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask a question, first of all?
Sure.
One of the motive issues, I'm getting to the question in a minute, just to preempt the Mayor. There's 3 motive issues. One of them seems to be the flying fox. Second one seems to be static play equipment versus, I guess, non-static. And the third one is the dog side of things. Now, this is a serious question. Do we routinely carry out poo audits, dog in park feces audits, just to determine if there is actually a problem or not? Because it may be, but a lot of the evidence, there's a bit of a polar set of opinions in the feedback. Some people say you can barely step foot on Prospect Gardens without scorching through some dog droppings, and other people say they don't see it as a problem at all. So,
Well, I'll happily redirect that question off of me to you, CEO.
I think we're going to have to take that on notice, Chair. Director, have you got anything to add? Or?
Through the Chair, we do have inspectors who identify hotspots, literally, outputters and footpaths. So they do inspect to see if there is an intensity of dog droppings, particularly on streets. We've started a new campaign where we're putting stickers on the footpath, asking people to make sure they pick up or dob in someone who's not picking up after the dogs.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
we could send a drone out, maybe just with sort of scanning the playground for overnight activity and things like that, and make sure it's clear.
Eating into your 5 minutes.
Sorry. How long have I got actually left?
About 4.5.
Okay, good. I think the thing that I've learned over this is that in our attempt to try to please everyone, we may have almost ended up overdoing things, and we've tried to fill it up with a bit of something that appeals to this demographic and a bit of something for this and a bit of something for that. And, maybe there's a case for saying we need to create a nice environment for people to work out how they want to use it themselves as well, as opposed to, cramming it full of so many things, and we seem to have put things in and come up with something we thought's fabulous, and the feedback is take a whole lot of things out and do something different. So, I think on balance, it looks like we've ended up with something that's going to be a pretty cool spot in that part of the city. But yeah, sometimes it might seem that not trying to do so much is probably the better approach.
Any further debate? From the chair, I've just got one question about playgrounds, and it reminds me of our brief we gave staff for Memorial Gardens. Have we got stuff in here that'll hesitate to use the word scare kids, but challenge kids? Something that'll make them really feel like they're stretching their ability and working at the edge of their abilities and really making them try harder. Is the thing high enough? The slippery dips to me look a bit benign, but have we got enough in there that challenges kids? But see,
through you, Chair, is that an issue, Director, with inclusive play? Is there a tension there?
Through the chair, sometimes it can be, but it's more of a case of, and it's how can we cater for everybody? And in this case, it's classified as a neighbourhood playground. A district playground is where we definitely try to cater for all age groups. As it's a neighbourhood playground, we're focusing more on the younger children, admittedly. So the highest bit of play is 4 metres above the ground where you could climb, which does give some element of risk to smaller children, but to older children, I imagine no. The TP, for example, again, is more for smaller children, the sense that format sense of enclosure. So it has been designed and catered for really more of the smaller children in the sort of 3 to 9 age group. The older age group isn't catered for that much, and as part of this, on purpose, as part of this proposal, as it's a neighbourhood park.
Thank you. I wasn't aware the classification of parks gave rise to the age of children we were catering for. I'm not sure it does. So I just note that I've had feedback recently, we've had it with Ratley Reserve and other parks, that where we don't provide things that are challenging for children, they think it's a bit boring. So I'm quite happy that we have adventure play spaces where people can make up their own games, and the floor is lava game's great, but it's hardly a challenge to physical capability. And I know that in Memorial Gardens we really pushed staff hard to have something that that was risky for kids. The platform got higher, the slippery dip's quite high and it's quite good. And we got caned because we took out the junior play equipment for a while because we couldn't afford to do it. When we put the junior play equipment back in, we could sell it again because it's untouched by any little kid, because all the little kids want to be on the big kid stuff, right? So it seems where we provide challenging equipment, every kid works out their place on it and what they can and can't do. And where we provide benign, or we shouldn't use that word, where we provide stuff that's suitable for young kids, even the young kids don't want to be on it. And so it's my comment on this is the drawings don't really, I think, do justice to how big things are. 4 metres is to the point of the dinosaur sculpture, isn't it? But there are a couple of suggestions that there could be a little nest inside there and a few other things, but I'd just encourage the CEO to keep an eye on those sort of things, that if the slippery dips on this are only 4 or 5 foot high, I'd suggest we'll be getting feedback that this is not good enough. And so it's just something I'd like you to take on board when you're actually ordering the equipment, that you make sure that it's good for as broad a range of kids that you can sensibly accommodate. The flying fox is taken out, and that's a little bit riskier for kids. It's no longer there. So I just sort of think it's probably a bit more important to emphasise that. Other than that, the consultation's been really good, really thorough, and I look forward to the consultation around dogs, because it's been an issue at this park, unlike many others, for quite a while. This park being fully fenced, other parks having just the playground fenced, or there's a mixed use that's accepted. So, look forward to that in time. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Harris, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, a couple of replies there, the dog business, or dog's business, in areas that are enclosed like that with very thick tree sort of stuff, possums and cats can sometimes be just as important as dogs and harder to detect until you're face down in the sandpit. So hopefully those sort of questions can look at some stage when we look at dogs in that particular park. But I do definitely take on board those things, and particularly what the Mayor said with about the challenges and things like that. I'm lucky. 34 years ago, started taking my kids to that park, and if you went there today, you can jump on the same seesaw and the same horse. It's on a big tractor spring, two of them, one broke. But so 34 years, and I don't know how long before I took tin lids there that existed. So it's a great change for the area for young people. And if you look at the school, we got a fairly young area, not so much the kids that are going to Nailsworth School, but the parents that are dropping them off. You will see quite often they've got a lot of prams with them and things, so they fit in. Challenges for older people, older children, I agree we look at, because the complaints I've had about Harvey Street, there's nothing decent down there, particularly swings. Everyone keeps mentioning swings, not here, but I mean out there. Big swings that we don't have, and we haven't got up abroad the swings. So they were the things mentioned. But if you look at older people at Nunuwera, and there is challenges down there already for older tin lids, because you go over to the tennis courts, and I don't know how many times we replace the netting, because the groups that get down there and play whatever sport is, I don't know. It's not a basketball or it's not a tennis, but it's throwing the balls at each other and in a net and things. And they run around the top and they run around the net. So they have a challenge of falling on their head. They have a very big challenge of that soccer area there. Who can kick someone's head in the harness with a ball? So it's a very physical. So that part of the park, say from the Batong eastward, so I'm really saying that part of the park, that are older, they're not children, older, younger people, they have a lot of challenges in there that you don't see at Memorial and others, skate park different, but the Memorial. So I do, if it was Harvey Street or another one, I would take a lot more on what the Mayor said with regards to that. But in the night time, and not just the daytime, in the night time, there is a lot of challenges for the others. So in the main, I think a lot of people will be concerned. I'm concerned with some of the adult equipment, exercise equipment near where people are barbecuing. You have someone like me with a singlet on whipping around on monkey bars while other people are trying to eat wouldn't be a very good effect if you haven't a feed. But please endorse it as it is, keeping in mind that the dog thing will be still looked at later, that it's a great thing. And I know there's a lot of young people around, but I emphasise in this one and other things that David or the Mayor has said, that we should quite often look at older people too, older young people, when we're doing some of this equipment. But hopefully people endorse this one as it is.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.3 is the Broadview Oval Yada Tuta Yada Draft Master Plan for endorsement. Somebody happy to move it in its current form, page 36. So Rip, wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. Look, first of all, just want to start by thanking the staff for getting it to this point and bringing this report tonight. I think, as I've gone on about before, I think an endorsed master plan is critical if we want to have any chance of getting state or federal grants. The state and federal ministers responsible want to see the council backs in and endorses a master plan. So I think this is a really important step where it is tonight. Also think if we can endorse the master plan, it gives clarity to all or most users where they fit into the precinct and what's on the map and on the plan. It also sets a scene, takes people on the journey, and I think it's really, really important that we communicate clearly to the community through this, and continue to communicate to the community that funding of a master plan like this, it's not a short-term fix. If we want to do everything that's on there, I think I was told it was like $12 to $13 million. So clearly we're going to need other funding sources, i.e. state government, federal government, the users and the sporting bodies at the precinct to chip in as well. But I think starting with the endorsement of the master plan is really, really important. Initially, I was hesitant to support the centre wing location because I was quite worried about the trees, but I have been advised by the staff that the centre wing location with the master plan as it is tries to do all it can to preserve as many trees as possible. So I'm more comfortable with that. I do believe a centre wing location will be obviously a benefit, as if you want to have the best quality community hub, having it in the centre wing would be probably the best position for the overall community and for the football club. I do take into account with this, though, it will upset some residents there. And so it's not an easy decision. We've just got to, we have to make a decision and get it happening. We've listened to feedback. I read there, I think if you add it up, I think 54% wanted it where it was, and I think 46% were happy to either see it at the centre location or a different location. So at some point we've got to make a decision, and we've got to take on board the feedback and make a decision for what we think is going to be the best value of the whole community as well. I believe the centre wing location will be the best, but taking on board again, I note that it will upset some residents and it will make some happy. And I guess we're just in the position now we've got to make the best quality decision we can, particularly the best quality decision that's also going to get us potentially grant funding as well. We've got to weigh it all up. It's a really hard decision to make, but I do believe that the centre wing location is the best overall for the community hub.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I have a question and then possibly seconder.
Take your question first.
What was stated there about the trees, if we have it in the position where the peppermint trees are, excluding the peppercorn trees, are we going to lose any of the other native trees?
Question, CEO.
Thank you, Director.
Through the chair, we proceed with option 1 on option 3 with the centre wing position. All those existing trees, particularly along the western boundary, would be retained. There'll be no trees removed.
All right.
Still happy to second it?
Yeah.
To speak to it?
Yes. Firstly, I want to second it by saying sorry to the people that don't want it where it's going to go because of their views and that sort of stuff. And I've thought hard about that and myself. But I look at the area, and I look at the area not now, but in forward and backwards, but already currently over 100 years in that area, and it's been football. Unless these people are different than me, none of them are alive when it was a park. It's always been some sort of football area that's there. All different, but still a sporting type thing there. I believe if we build it properly, the building, and fits in as we've done with the rest, the playground on the other side, the other things that I think, I feel very important that we think about the 2 tennis clubs and particularly the bowling club as well, that we also don't just glorify a community club that will be basically used by the football club, that these other places are just as important as us as a council as we go further. So I'm seconding it on the grounds that all the other things we talked about, the walking path that we fixed, the dog park that we fixed, the tennis courts, both that have come to an end, whatever we do with the bowling club, that how it works, and those 2 St. Philip's courts and that area there, that it's marked down, as Simon shows on the map, that has the various sort of possibilities down there, half courts and all that sort of stuff. And I believe, if I can ask not ask, but if someone just nods us enough, in amongst all this, we're looking at a new toilet by the playground, between the playground and the dog park. Yeah. So I'm still endorsing that. So very sorry to the people that see it as a different way, but I'm going to support it as well.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Again, thanks for all the hard work to get it to this point, and I believe, I certainly support Councillor Rip's comments that we need a master plan. Initially, the journey was on a kind of combined sports facility, and I think that would have been the better outcome. But given the journey we've taken, this is where we've landed. One of the questions I do have is that I'm noting in the master plan option 1, the centre wing position, what's noted on here has a certain footprint. Now, I still believe in people over cars, and I'd be inclined in the design, because we do have another item after this, to sacrifice some car spaces, maybe in favour of some more ground floor community access space. And I'm just wondering, in agreeing to the master plan, are we committed to the footprint as indicated in the report?
See ya.
No, we're not. So in committing to the position, we're not agreeing to the size of the facility. Is that what you're talking
Necessary to put an amendment in the motion to clarify that?
Look, from the chair, I'd suggest no, because the motion does not endorse a square meterage nor a dimensioned location. You've got an indicative location, a drawing, which if someone was to hold us to account would say, well, so how are you going to dimension it? So in other words, I think there's still some ambiguity in that. What in principle being asked to do is choose between options 1, 2 or 3. All 3 of them are not perfectly defined, except for them being separate locations indicatively. So
okay,
I think in answer to your question, there's sufficient flexibility, and no, we don't need an amendment. Yeah. Sorry, anything further?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Group.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had a similar question, which I just want to continue that line of questioning for one moment. It does, in the master plan, talk about a 2-storey building. And I know just in the last couple of days there has been a suggestion. Why do we need a single-storey building instead of a 2-storey building? Now, that's for another time to have that debate. I just go back to the recommendation that says minor updates to the master plan. Can somebody give me some assurance that if we went from a 2-storey building to a 1-storey building, that would be considered a minor change?
See ya.
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
Through the chair, I know it might seem major going from a 1-storey to
Kind of,
a
yeah.
2-storey, but it's about, does council agree in principle to this location? That size could be changed if it was a 1-storey, single-storey building. I think we could adapt that building envelope to encompass that master plan. So I believe it to be a minor amendment.
We have that in public record. I'm happy with that. The second question I had just relates to the other part of the facility, or of the location, because of course this is just one bit of a big oval and a number of complex things that are going on. If I was to look at this as a master plan, this looks like a master plan around one building with a whole lot of other things kind of added on. And when you actually go to the master plan document, it's not to the second last page that you actually get a picture of the whole site. So I'm just wondering whether maybe, well, the first question is, have we approved, or I just can't recall whether we have formally approved the remaining parts of the master plan, including tennis club and toilets and so forth, cricket nets. Have we approved that? The intention that we're actually approving those other items tonight as part of this, because there's very little commentary in the paper about that.
Through you, Chair, my understanding is no, but Director?
Through the chair, of all that information regarding the other components of the master plan was provided in the previous council report. We didn't want to replicate it here, so we're endorsing the entire site tonight, including all other aspects.
Okay. Thank you. So just for clarity, we have not then, through the chair, we have not yet approved the other components of the entire site, but that's what this is doing tonight.
Sorry, just to clarify, we've not been asked to approve an overall master plan if we have, we haven't done it. So we haven't been asked to approve components of a master plan. There's only ever been a master plan discussed, not bits of it or precincts within the master plan. This is the time where we've been asked to endorse the whole lot. No one's asked for it to be broken up in segments before, therefore the segments haven't been approved separately.
Okay. So I just want to be clear that what we're doing tonight is considering the entire master plan, which means we're locking ourselves into the toilets and the club rooms and the croquet club and the whatever else, because the paper itself is focused very much on Broadview Oval for good reason, and this is what's been the biggest debate point of the last little while. I just don't want to lose the fact that we're also approving 22 other issues or 22 other components of the master plan on here. I think it's probably a bit remiss that we don't have some of the other information in here. Last comment I'd make is just when we finalise, and I presume there's still a little bit of ability to nuance the actual document, and of course we'll nuance the document for different purposes, but if I was looking at this as a master plan document, it's focused on one thing in the overall Broadview Oval area. So if I was part of the tennis club, I'd say, well, this master plan means nothing to me because it's all about the footy club. If I was a cricket club, I'd probably think similar, or other users of the site. So I'm just, look, it's a comment, I'm not going to seek an amendment or anything, but when we do come to developing this as a document for the entire site, it should be focused on the entire site equally, not just one component of it. Now, obviously, for a grant application, we might want to focus on different things because we're focusing, maybe grant on a particular item or another item, and that's fine. But I think as a general document, it should be more, more equal in terms of its contribution to all of the site, not just one part of it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll just speak briefly from the chair, perhaps to provide some clarity around that. I do note the previous speaker has mentioned that the recommendation asks us to endorse the master plan as presented in attachments 1 to 8, and correctly concludes that there's a lot of stuff in attachments 1 to 8 that don't relate to one aspect, not other aspects. It might be useful if someone wished to amend it so that we could say as presented in attachment 7, so that that's the only thing we're referring to, and everything else remains fluid, because we certainly wouldn't want to be as defined about attachment 6, for instance, or worried about the previous pages, which address a particular topic. But I think attachment 7 is the one that actually has the master plan as summarised. It's been before us a few times. We've whittled down a few issues through workshops. There's nothing here. Sorry, there's one thing here that surprises me, but I'll come to that in a second. So that this is the attempt to try and get the master plan bedded down. It's a document that builds on previous documents, but I do believe if someone wanted to amend it so it's just attachment 7, that would probably make sense. I'll leave that to another speaker. I'm cautious about moving things from the chair, let alone amending them. The one thing that I did want to ask a question around was item 7 on the master plan, which is a proposed mini skate park. And just to ask, where did that come from? Is it in response to consultation, or well, I remember previously it was a basketball hoop area and the cricket nets were going to be taking over the third court. Feedback of that third court worked pretty well. So just a bit around that, if I could see.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the Director.
I direct that to the Manager of Special Projects, Chris Newby.
Thanks, Simon. Through the Chair, during community consultation on the broader master plan, there were suggestions received that...
Want to come up? Yeah, thank you. Just grab a chair here so we can hear what you're saying. I don't want to miss a word. Thanks, Chair.
Through the Chair, during community consultation, feedback was received that potentially the placement of a half-court basketball court wasn't entirely necessary, although they are popular. The example given was a new combined tennis and basketball court facility in North Adelaide that goes great guns at all hours. Predominantly for basketball, but sometimes there's tennis being played there as well. There are 3 courts in the northwestern corner of Broadview Oval precinct, which lend themselves to combined basketball and tennis courts, and that's detailed in the master plan, which offered up an opportunity to adopt or suggest a a different use to this area to complement the running track, which is also useful for skateboarders, kids on scooters and the like. So that it's just an opportunity to inject something different in the recreational space within the precinct.
So just an answer to my question, where did it come from? It came from staff. But the community suggested it?
Yes. So that was in a previous report to council. That was one of the suggestions that came from community.
I'm sorry, I must have missed that one. I'm quite happy to see it there because I'm sure there's a couple of councillors who've been here a long time who remember the previous suggestion about having a skate park in this area, and that didn't work out so well. We ended up with a BMX track instead. So I have no difficulty with it being there. I just want to know its origins. The second question I've got is around the cricket nets, item 4. Previously, they were shown as going right across that third court and up to the side of the proposed hub. They're significantly shorter now. Has there been any feedback from anybody, or we asked for anybody's feedback on whether they're long enough to be useful?
Through the chair, no, we haven't asked that specific feedback of the cricket clubs or the cricket club.
Yeah, that might. I'd suggest that we do along the journey before we lock in the final detail around some of these aspects, because the run-up that some fast bowlers would want might be running down the side path of the new hub to get enough speed up. So there was just a couple of my reflections on the design, but I'm happy to endorse it. It picks up a whole pile of issues that we've raised, that the consultation process has raised. It doesn't define things to an extent that we're locked in. For instance, the tennis club rooms is just an L-shaped white box. The bowling club says it's refurbished but doesn't say how. The hub's got a bit of a shape to it, but we know already that that's probably not likely to be the actual shape. And similarly, when we had this discussed before, we didn't have the actual bike track laid out or the actual playground equipment. It's a master plan, so it's there to guide the next stage of design development around particular parts of the park. And it's worked well as a draft, giving rise to the running track. The original route of the running track on the original draft master plan is not the one that's there now. So clearly, when you go into your actual design exercises, you have to check finer points of design and restrictions and whatever, and adapt accordingly. So I'm happy that it's a master plan. I'm happy what's in it, and I'm happy with the process that got us to it. So subject to somebody maybe wanting to talk about attachment 7 instead of all of them, I'm happy to endorse it as it is. Thank you. Councillor
I ask a question, please?
I'll take a brief question if I can.
Just before the gentleman leaves.
Councillor Harris.
Just to clarify a question you asked. So although I haven't seen it in there, the question is, we're putting some sort of skate park thing there as well?
That's what item 7 is.
And then save me looking down where
the basketball half court was going to go,
Which is in
Okay.
where that building is now.
Yeah, I've been down that track and the residents still live there. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Barnett. Sorry, you wish to ask it? Sorry, Councillor Barnett, a question. Councillor Tobacco.
Through the chair, just regarding one of the things that came back from the visit to Goodwood, there was some shedding where people were storing things across the oval. Just looking between the cricket bowling lanes, what do you call them? You can tell I'm not a sports cricket nets. Cricket nets. And the tennis court / basketball court. Is it possible that we could look at possibly some storage? Because certainly the presentation was very short on storage. Has that ever been considered as part of the master plan? So additional shedding around the...
Question C, presumably back to the manager.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Through the chair, storage wasn't a priority for the cricket club. Obviously, it isn't a priority for the recreational aspect of the master plan. It was anticipated to be included as part of the new sports and community hub, and was also anticipated as part of the co-located tennis facility. So it would be integrated within those buildings rather than separate too. There is potentially capacity in the future to do a freestanding shed in an alternate location, such as on the eastern side of the oval, where currently there's some occasional car parking that occurs.
Just a follow-up question. The per square metre for a separate shed as opposed to $2,500 to $3,000 a square metre for a facility could be considerably cheaper. Shedding as an option for storage?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Barnett,
Sure, there aren't more questions.
you have the floor.
Yes, I do. Yes, my interpretation of item 10.3, recognising that we're all, going to be discussing one part of that in item 10.4, but it's like other master plans that were done with our recreation areas. The first cab off the rank was the Prospect Oval and Environs one. So it's an overarching plan for the future of the precinct, all right? And so that's, to my, what we're looking at in item 10.3. And also we should notice that it's subject, obviously, to adequate sourcing, adequate funding opportunities, and that so that's how we're going. So it's a future plan. We've already done some of it already, as has been mentioned before, the path and those sorts of things. So and it doesn't mean to say that all this is absolutely in stone or whatever you like to call it, grass, whatever. So again, it's the master plan. The idea is an overarching plan for the future of the precinct, and we may do other things from time to time, and that some of those things may change. Pardon me. And apropos of that, I'm prepared, I assume I'm allowed to continue and do an amendment to have remove attachments 1 to 7 and just input attachment 7 in part 2.
Yes, I'm happy to accept them as an amendment, and as I customarily do, ask the mover and secretary if they're happy to incorporate. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I do that, Councillor Barnett?
No, I think that covers this particular item.
Okay, thank you. Mover happy to incorporate that change? Yep, thank you. Seconder happy to incorporate?
A park probably.
That's a yes. Was that a yes, those words? A hand was a yes. Okay, so now seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate that change? That's unanimous, thus incorporated. Thank you. No need for an amendment, Councillor Barnett. It's been changed by agreement. Anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? That being the case, Councillor Ripp, do you wish to sum up?
Well, just to thank everyone for their contributions, and I think as we move forward, I'll touch on it in the next item. But I think really to appease residents, I think it's going to be fundamental that we get the design quality right of the community hub, particularly for what the residents then look at. We need to ensure that they're looking at something that's of an excellent design quality as well for them. So on that note, I'll finish that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Just don't tell them, Alan. Don't tell them. 10.4. Broadview Oval Yada Tutu Yada Community and Sports Hub proposed concept design plan. The recommendation was published on page 51. There's a revised recommendation circulated in response to a couple of comments, and noting that, so it's up there in yellow, noting in particular that in order to meet the grant deadline, we had to have a motion up to this meeting, which meant it had to be published Thursday, which was the same evening we went on a tour to learn about other hubs. So we've got a bit of a crossover in the logistics. So we've revised, in particular, part 5. Just to say, this draft design, we're seeking adoption purely for the purpose of applying for grants.
Can I just go? Sorry, can I just? Yeah.
You'll see you read through that. Much of it is the same. Part 2 and 5 are different. So Sorry, I'm happy to take a couple of brief questions on the revised wording, but I want to be careful not to start debate. Councillor Barnett.
I was going to have a whisper in your ear about that doesn't, attachment 7 doesn't interfere with attachments 1 to 35.
It's that 1 to 35 are about the actual sports, community and sports hub, not the master plan. Yeah, so that should be okay. You're a long way from my ear. Councillor Ripp.
Just noting, 0.5 doesn't lock us into a final design. It's just for the purpose of a
Correct. Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
As per part 2.
Yeah. So I'm just making sure that they don't contradict each other. That's fine.
Okay. People understand the intent.
Yes.
Somebody happy to move as per what's on the screen? Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
I don't want to add much. Just to make sure I understand, or people understand what I'm moving, that what we're doing here, due to time-wise, is while we haven't got a total finish of a project, we're actually making sure we've got a shell of a project so we can apply for appropriate funding to assist us in supplying this to the area. On that grounds, I am moving it as it is.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it?
Obviously, continuing from the previous item, I think it's going to be fundamental with design quality right for residents. I'll repeat it again, particularly for those where this building at the centre wing location is going to be impacting the residents, and those residents will be unhappy. So we've really got to work with them and get the best quality design we can for them. Equally, and I'm just wanting to pick this up. Sorry, the thing froze. What page is it? Yeah, if we go to page 56, which I think is probably the big picture, I also would like to see that we get the design better. A couple of points in this design quality better. Particularly, I'm concerned at the lack of outdoor sort of seating for people. So what I did like when I went to Goodwood, even though they said had they been able to get an extra metre forward, they would have been able to have 170 seats instead of the 85 they've got. They had some outside sort of grandstand style seating as well. I don't see any of that with that design. So I'd like to know whether that would be possible, because that looked quite good, or had quite a good viewing area at Goodwood the other night. Equally, I'd also like whether we can get the building looking a bit better, particularly as people go down the running track and they're just looking at bricks, how we can improve that, because that doesn't look exciting to me at all in that picture. So look, I mean, I know that's getting down to the nitty gritty, but I think, some outside seating to expose, because most people that are going to sit upstairs at a football club will probably want to sit outside to watch the game, from sort of my experience. So it's good to have the mixture of outside and indoor seating, but I would hope that we would also we would have some of that. Equally, like I've said, the design quality, whether we can incorporate, I hope also that we've had some recent conversations with the Broadview Football Club about how we can incorporate some of that club identity in the design, but we also need to ensure that we have the ability for outside, whether it's a canteen access, because in some of the earlier plans we were seeing coming to workshops, I wasn't excited with the lack of community sort of accessibility, where it's like the lack of design to incorporate like a community cafe, the canteen. It looked very lacking in some of the earlier plans. So I think, having that ground level accessibility for people to go and purchase food and drink for a football game, but equally when the community isn't being played and you've got community access, we need accessibility for the community to have enough space to have a community cafe, activation at the ground level is going to be important, as well as the upper level. So just some things. I'm more than happy to second the motion so we can get on with it and apply for grants. And this is a fantastic start, but I do believe it needs some work still.
Thank you. Any further debate? Deputy Mayor.
So yeah, let's move on with this. This is a starting point, and it's clear in the motion that we're getting it to this point for the purposes of applying for external grants, and I don't think we need to spend too much more time worrying about this. Particularly, I'm a little bit concerned about the guys doing sit-ups, but he seems to be buried in the ground. The fact that we don't want anyone buried in the ground.
Very soft
Ball.
Very, very soft ball.
Very agile.
Not lava, is it?
Floor's lava.
And we're at a starting point. You know, there's a huge amount of work that's been done to get the previous motion and this motion to this point. And we know we're on a journey now, which will involve establishing a governance process, working with the stakeholder groups to ensure that we preempt anything that might cause concerns. We're going to have heaps of opportunities to get the community involved. And I think we're very good at consulting. We're very good at going and taking on board what's happening around us, what we can see that's good and bad. I've no concern that as a group we won't go down that path and investigate thoroughly and come up with something which is not a soul-destroying compromise that no one wins, but the best of all the things that we can pull together to make sure that as many people as possible win. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting on with the next stage of the process.
Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Beckett.
Look, I support the motion. I think it's really good that we're sort of going through with this and getting some money in for that area of Prospect, which I think is sorely serving. However, I do think it's really important to bring it back in far as the design details, because I think it was a great idea of the Deputy Mayor to get us looking at those facilities. What I don't see in the room tonight is the architect, because we've had 2 sessions with the architect, and I don't see any of the feedback that we gave, or some of the feedback that we gave as far as community and user experience and storage addressed in the design that's been put forward. I think that's a waste of our time, and I don't know where the directions come from, but it's almost they've gone back to the Goodwood design and put on a community room at the bottom. So I asked actually the CEO to put up the plans of the different ones we've looked at, but that wasn't accepted, but I've sent some links around. But basically, if you compare the community/gym space, so keeping in mind the gym space that's at North Adelaide, that's supposed to be a community pavilion, is full of gym gear, and again, it never gets used by the community. So the 37 square metres is what's proposed for the community downstairs, and the smallest room at Glenunga that we went to see was 80 square metres. So just some quick calculations. If we were looking for 60 square metres of shedding, it would be at $200 a square metre, it would be $12,000. 60 square metres of community space would be $2,500, $150,000. So I'd rather have some shedding off-site and have some more space for the community. So I'm quite disappointed that we've had 2 bites of the cherry with the architect, and that's what's come back, because I'd like to see something a bit warmer, take on some other points that have been made about lack of colour, certainly not exciting. You look at Prospect Road with our murals and everything, I think the proposal could be a lot more diverse and less institutional, because if you're looking for just an institutional football building, I think it hits the mark going out to the community. But I look forward to, whether it's the same architect or I don't know, whatever, we'd like to get something that reflects our diverse community in that location. And I think we saw some great ideas in our field trip, so I'd like to see them incorporated into the design. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bunnett.
Yes, I was sort of following along behind the architect and some other people, and we've been doing the work for us, was taking lots of photos, and there was lots of discussion about things. So it's my understanding that we're adopting this tonight for further design, development and analysis, including the preparation of a prudential report and advice on a facility management model. So the concept will be further refined during additional council and club workshops to ensure the needs of specific user groups are met. So there's still time for all these things and, you know, further discussion with the other stakeholders there. So so essentially my understanding is that this is to hit that deadline basically of the end of January to get it in for a grant as the draft. Notice word draft design. All right. So that's where we're at tonight, and we're you know, we've got other things that I noticed when we visited the 2 different sports facilities, and that I commented on in the bus going back that, you know, I wasn't welded to one or the other, that we want this to be our unique one for our unique needs, for our unique stakeholders. So being a smart city, I think it'd be good to look at some of the energy saving and cost saving and more modern use of technology to make things easier for clubs and the community to operate in a shared use facility. I think we need to keep in mind that the Broadview Sports and Recreation Precinct, Yana Tutuyata, is identified as a regional park, as in previous council documents, and that's intended to serve the broader metropolitan area beyond the immediate locality. So we've, as been mentioned before, we've already begun and or completed various upgrades, including a jogging circuit, fitness stations, BMX track, dog park, playground. Bowls and tennis clubs are proposed to receive refurbishment and upgrades to courts, fields and club rooms. And so I'd like to draw your attention to page 61 of the report. Quote, the City of Prospect has identified a tremendous opportunity to replace existing club rooms with a new community health and fitness hub at Broadview Oval. This new hub will be a timeless, long-lasting community asset. While the current facilities are well utilised and loved by the local community, a new hub will embrace the potential to maximise accessibility to all youth groups, increase the usability for multiple sport and community groups, and connect to surrounding public open spaces and amenities. This will result in an active and integrated community destination for a variety of recreation and local sports cups alike. And on page 74, I believe we have a good start to further discussion and workshops and engagement with the stakeholders on the three main brief areas from our architect. The game day facilities, the clubroom facilities and the community facilities. And so we're capturing the required functional needs and performance quality of the hub while keeping within budget. So I'm happy to support what's before us.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further debate? Just from the chair, I agree with much of what's been said. I also agree the architect was on the tour, and thanks that he was thankfully he's able to make it and taking lots of notes and lots of photographs and having lots of conversations. I take it from if you listen to me that we know Vigola's on our facility. But anyway, I'm sure you all had your chance to have a chat if you were able to take it. This design's nowhere near complete, but it's complete enough for a grant application. That's what's critical at this point in time. There are many aspects about it I think we can improve, and I think the iterative design process we have, which is one that keeps going between the stakeholders to get better and better, is what we have to do. It's inevitable that we'll have feedback from the footy club, which will drive some aspects. We'll have feedback from us on behalf of the community, which will drive others. We haven't actually spoken to the community in detail about this hub. Perhaps we should talk to a few potential user groups and ask them what sort of things they'd look for as part of our process going forward. And it makes sense that we would just keep doing that to further refine the design before we actually get, some concrete in the ground. But I have to say, I'm looking forward to having concrete in the ground, because that means we would have won a huge grant, and that will bring life to this vision. It will give us a chance to build a community hub in an area that really doesn't have one of the vision that we've got. And when I say the vision that we've got, I think we need to discipline ourselves to work out, well, what is our vision for a community hub? What sort of uses do we see? Because that's the test we have to apply to this facility. Now, I've stated, it should be good for a birthday party, a 60th or a first birthday we heard at Glenunga. I think that's another good test. It should be good for a training session, even corporate training. It should be good for a club function. So, I just run those scenarios through my mind when I look at designs and trying to think whether they'd work or not. I think we're well down the path, and some further design refinement will get us much, much closer. A couple of things, for instance, I've noticed the current orientation has the open space area underneath, which we saw worked really well at Glenunga, but has it on the car park end of the building, which at first glance makes sense because that's how you'd approach the building, the main entrance, et cetera, et cetera. But that's where all the wind comes from. So the south western side is usually sheltered, and most clubs have their back to the southwestern winds, which is why, in fact, the Broadview Footy Club's current building is where it is. because that shields the players from the worst of the weather. So I think that's probably not the best place to have the undercover space. And Glenunga spoke about how the wind whips around from the southern side into their facility. The southeastern side around to their facility. Also, the upper level viewing area I thought was kind of nice, but I thought it'd probably be hogged by the home team's coach, and they'd probably shoo everyone else away. But it also has no wind shelter, so it wouldn't be terribly good on a windy day to watch footy up there. And I wonder whether, if we're going to have that, it could be a balcony out the front of the community or the club room area, the community space, rather than hanging off the side over another roof. I don't understand the cost implications of one versus the other, but I thought it could be in a more useful position. So there's a few things like that that's going through my mind that I think are good refinements. But I do think the design's advanced from what we initially saw, and there has been some listening and some responding. A lot more to come. Happy to endorse this. Let's get the grant application in. Let's give us the strongest chance. The footy club are on board with this current design. They know there'll be further refinement. Their support's critical to us getting all the lobbying we need around all those bodies that advise the Minister about which applications to support. So I think we're in a good space at this point. Notwithstanding, I look forward to the next workshop and further iterations. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Harris, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I'll just start with a question. That picture that Councillor Stephen pointed out on page 56, when he pointed the area, can you tell me which side the oval's on?
Just show us what you're looking at there, page 56. You're standing on the
tree is.
flank.
Where your thumb is.
Oh, so that's not a building. That's all right. I just couldn't see an oval to it. Okay, look, my original statements stand. I listened to what people have said, particularly saying, because I wasn't able to be there Thursday, that we were talking about with an architect of looking at things and things. So these people are making comments. They should be here to guide us through. The major party will be a football one. Still can't see an oval. The major part would be the football part of it. So we have to really have them on board. And if we're looking at other groups or people, particularly even over the years, the tennis people and that might not have a club room for a while. Well, a new club room. So I'm hoping we move along and we get somewhere early part of this year to see concrete being poured on the ground, and hopefully no trees, and hopefully a rethink on a skate park. Thank you.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Good discussion. Good feedback for staff there. I'm sure they've been making notes. Item 10.5, long-term financial plan 2022 to 2031 and key financial indicator targets. Recommendations on page 92. Councillor Rip, happy to move it?
Yes.
Speak to it?
Yes, please. Just want to walk people through, particularly if you haven't seen this, the discussions. This stemmed obviously from the discussions at the Audit Committee. So what the Audit Committee recommended back to Council, and this is obviously here for your consideration, is that on an operation surplus ratio, the first year going from a -1% -5 to positive 5% and moving towards a -1% to 3%. A lot of that rationale around that, particularly from the discussion, from my understanding, and the Mayor will pick up on other points or pull me up if I'm wrong, I guess the sentiment of the feedback was that if we have too high surpluses, it means we're probably banking money essentially and we're not spending it. So the communities are not realising some of that. So they want to see us probably not having too high surpluses. That money really should be being utilised, whether it be applying for grants, whether it be fixing assets. So having more of that money going back into the community. They also feel that a 10-year targets, it'd be better if we actually have 5-year targets, and they feel that some of those are probably more realistic for measuring. So the 10-year target for 1 year goes from positive 1% to 3% to 0% to 2%, again addressing the same points I was raising earlier. They also feel that for net financial liabilities, that having a really low-end measurement, or again, going from 10-year to 5 with that, but having a really low-end measurement is probably not necessary. So the 1 year from 10 to 90% goes just to up to 90%. So there's a bit more flexibility there. Again, I think rolling 10 to 5. Yeah. Again, this reflects the Audits Committee's views that the City of Prospect does have, in their eyes, ability to borrow more, but obviously that's subject to the items that they put up on the Audit Committee meetings. So really, what they're saying is don't be afraid to borrow, but be realistic, and these are also great borrowing conditions and great borrowing times. We're not going to. These are probably some of the best times to borrow that we will ever see. So having that as I guess, not a minimum low-end target, but just having it up to sort of the maximum target, I think it was those reflections. That was my assessment on it, and just wanted to sort of picture that to you so you understood that. So I think it's really important that we understand these particular targets.
Thank you, Councillor. And our rep on the Audit Committee. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. And just to add that I zoomed into the Audit Committee meeting and how impressed I was with the rhetoric from that meeting. Very, very professional.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yes, again, thank you to Councillor Rip and the other councillors who attended that session. I could only stay for half, but I went to the other one the week before, a couple of weeks before, and that was really interesting. Probably just drawing elected members' attention, page 95. I have my glasses here tonight. It was quite interesting how they broke it down to the different models. So depending on what we're trying to fund. So on the previous page, page 94, it actually breaks down strategic projects. If we go ahead with the Broadview redevelopment, being really aware of our asset management plan, which is still to come to us. So I think we just have to be mindful of all these things, that it's great to borrow, but we've still got all these things coming to us. And getting back to page 95.3, I'm really keen, and I hope it's coming to a workshop soon, that the council consider reviewing existing levels of service and current operating and capital projects to determine if savings can be identified. So sometimes I know that's being done on a kind of ad hoc basis. Let's find some savings here, or let's find some savings there. But I think we really have to look at service levels and going, okay, what do we really want to do? Because we can't do everything. It's getting to that point because the capacity for our residents and ratepayers to continue to pay higher rates in this climate. I mean, we can put rates to 5% and deliver everything, but I don't think that's going to be feasible. The other thing on, I think it was page 96.11, the Audit Committee advises that Models C and D are able to proceed if grant applications are successful. Council need to consider whether projects proceed if grants are not successful. So I think we have to be really careful what we're promising as well. It's good to endorse master plans and sporting facilities and those kind of things, but we're looking at grants for infrastructure and these projects. We just need to be mindful of what we can afford should we not be successful. But let's fingers crossed, and hopefully we get some money in the door. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? There being none. Councillor Rip, do you see any need to sum up?
Yeah, just to add the point that obviously on page 95, when we're looking at these models, they were also, Audit Committee were looking at worst case scenario. So if savings weren't to be delivered, we have, and I know the CEO is part of that discussion, and the CEO alluded to us at the last workshop that he is looking at operational savings strongly as well. And I think that's really fundamental to reduce some of those rate rises as well. And I really hope that that's taken on board as well. Nodding good. Yeah, that's going to be really important. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.6, State Government Grant Funding Office 2021. We have a revised recommendation. If we could just have that up on the screen. only revised in terms of adding Part D for a program that has only become recently available, and work by staff has made us able to submit a project. CEO, just a very brief explanation, if you can, of the additional Part D.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very briefly, we were aware of some funds that became available only a couple of weeks ago. They were federal funds, but we've got to do them through the state agency. We've got to the end of this week to submit an application, so very tight. It's a $50 million fund to look specifically at flood mitigation. We've got a plan that we've been told would be regarded very highly. Mitcham probably would be number one, we'd be number two in the state. There'll be only 2 applications. It does require us to, it'll be three-way funding, federal 1.5, state 1.5, and us 1.5. This is a great opportunity with a tight time frame to look at some serious flooding issues around the areas you're so familiar with. And having discussed it with the chair just before the meeting, the plan would be to go ahead and apply. And of course, we're not sure whether we'll get the other grant. So, but as you know, the council policy is that I need your endorsement for me to apply to any grant. And if we win them all, we can work out which ones council want to fund. But this is quite a rare opportunity to address a long-term flooding issue that we've got in our city. So I'm sorry we brought it late, but we were sort of in the vice of this very tight time frame.
Okay, thank you, CEO. Just a couple of brief questions about the additional item only. Councillor Rick first.
Would it be possible, I don't know, do we need to suspend meeting procedures to ask further in-depth questions on this, or are we just doing it without
We would be better to. Councillor Tobacco, did you have a similar question that wanted some more detail?
Yeah, just a little bit more detail. It wouldn't be.
I'm happy to seek suspension of meeting procedures up until 8:30 should be needed. All those in favour? Against it is carried. It's just a pipe. Why are you so interested in a pipe? This is a $4.5 million pipe. That's why. CEO, I wonder whether I could refer it through you to Manager of Infrastructure. That would be very helpful. Is that image available easily through the system? Probably not. Have you? No. I can certainly circulate it if that's. You can perhaps pass that around. Yes.
Through the chair, I think the intent would be tomorrow to send out a detailed memo that included the imagery. Keep in mind we were only dealing with this 4:30, 5 o'clock today. So there'd be a lot more detail we could provide then in a format that's useful. I can try to explain a little bit of what you're going to see very briefly handed past you. Originally, when we spoke about this opportunity for funding, we spoke about the fact that in the small print it did say there was opportunity to apply with zero funding. Last week. Since then, we have worked through the opportunity we thought we might be able to put up forward for the funding. We were originally looking at the Barker Inlet upgrade and possibly upgrading the culverts under the rail line. In looking in further detail and really assessing the space available, the Barker Inlet, we actually need to acquire land. So straight away, it's not going to meet the timeframes available. So therefore, we need to dump that aspect and look for something that has actually got a lot more opportunity for actual delivery. So we've gone for the simplest part of what is actually a more complex longer-term upgrade, but it's probably the most impactful part of the upgrade, which is from the Barker Inlet, under the rail line, up to Churchill Road, along Churchill Road, and including Charles Street, which is probably one of our worst streets for flooding. So it's actually putting in place a large trunk main effectively that we'll be able to add to and improve future flows while giving some immediate benefit. We do highlight though and repeat, it is stage one of other segments that you'll have to do over in the longer term, but it is actually a significant body of work in its own right and will have significant benefit. We have been assessing a number of options, trying to see what would give us the best outcome in this area. This is the best outcome we can get that's actually constructible.
if that makes sense to everyone. It's a very difficult area to actually get our levels that we need, our falls, our capacity in our pipes. There is another option that I wish was constructible, but we just can't fit it within Churchill Road corridor. Some of the infrastructure is that large, we just can't make it happen. This is actually workable and will give us a majority of the benefit of other almost as good outcomes.
Questions? Alice?
I think it's great because obviously, we've got our park now on Charles Street. But one of the things I'm always interested in is how you can actually sort of keep water from going out into stormwater. Is there any opportunities in that new development or as a condition of that going in, that because obviously you don't want to burden it more with more development, do they have to contain some of their stormwater on site?
So the land that Renewal SA have taken on, the previous Caulfield site, they do have the intent to actually put in significant retention basins. So that's actually a positive along those lines. So they won't add to it materially, which is a very good thing because some of the levels on the back pipe there more of a holding pipe than a drainage pipe. I think it's about 0.1% of fall across the entire pipeline. It's not going to go anywhere quickly. So they're very much looking at doing the right thing by that development site and developing probably quite a high quality outcome for us. The adjoining aspect there, less so. They actually are relying on the stormwater infrastructure to a higher degree. They've got less on-site stormwater management. That's what it is at this point. I suspect, and Scott is here who might be able to answer some of this better than I can, but I suspect most developments going forward would require on-site management of most stormwater collected.
Scott?
I think that's a fair comment. Certainly in our previous dealings with portions of that site, so the Churchill Road, they've obviously been worked for with our engineering team, and that has involved a mixture of consideration of on-site detention as against moving water through to pipes in the rail area. There is some storage on site and then quite some capacity in terms of flow rate through that pipe, and I expect that conversation will continue to on.
So anything we can do for some local collection would aid this stormwater system, and that's in any future works we do in that greater area. To be quite honest, even minor amounts will make a difference here. The system is that overloaded.
Scott, it's my recollection that when we developed the development plan for 250 Churchill, the whole allotment, we put in a requirement for them to retain up to a 1 and 2 year event on site. Is that still in the development plan?
As an individual policy provision, there are a series of provisions in the land division policy suite that mostly address 1 in 20 year RI events. I couldn't speak to the specific policy I mentioned in that discussion, but certainly the premise of the development to this point has been that mixture of detention and flow rate and capacity.
I had thought that they had deferred their costs to detain to stage 2 in order to get stage 1 moving, and therefore we're looking for their proposal to manage stormwater at high volumes of stormwater in stage 2. The block that the government's bought is actually stage 3 or a separable portion. Is that how you see it?
Certainly in terms of open space, generally that is true, in that wasn't moving through stage 1. There was a greater expectation in stage 2. In terms of particularly stormwater, there hasn't been any enhanced expectation in relation to stage 2. What was used was a mechanism around oversizing the pipes and that consideration of flow rate capacity rather than the detention basin that was originally proposed. So that is no longer part of that scheme and is not likely to be necessary, subject to the manner in which sort of road and building water is dealt with. If the proponents of that whole site are doing the amount of built form development in stage 2 that they're signalling to us at this stage, it may well be that can be dealt with in relation to each building as a relatively high proportion of that area of stage 2.
Really an issue. I can certainly attest to in a significant rainfall, the water on Churchill Road is such a huge volume that the water in Charles Street can't get out. even if when the pump broke down, water in Shaftesbury gets trapped because there's raging torrents going past. So anything we can do to get that underground and away more efficiently just increases the capacity both underground and therefore overland. So I think it's a good project to do, and expensive because we've got to go through a highly active road, heavy freight route, so the pipes have to be quite strong, and also got to get under a train line, which is about almost one of the most complex things you can do. My encouragement to the staff is if we get this grant, we want to do it while the suburban line's still shut down, and to start digging a hole there straight away when no one's looking because it'll be cheaper. And there's a heavy freight route, so don't underestimate the pain involved in just doing that short section across the train corridor. But we need to build capacity at the bottom end of our system because the rainfall event we had, I think, was less than a 1 in 5 from memory. It wasn't a really bad one.
We have done the modelling there, and it doesn't achieve a 1 in 2 at the moment.
Yeah, I would say it was a 1 in 2, and it didn't work. Yeah, so that matches my thinking. Yeah. Any more questions while we're out of session just on that particular item? Stephen?
I like to be an optimist, and the best situation is we get all the grants. Okay, if that happens, obviously we don't want to be in the situation where we're knocking anything back because it's not great. If we put some thought into how we would handle that, because I like to be an optimist and think we are going to get them all.
But a hat, we could pass that around.
I mean,
Money.
apart from the hat, but let's say we do get them all. How do we manage that? Because we don't want to be in a position to knock things back either.
So
Thank you. Good question. We've been working out what that looks like. 2.5 for Broadview, 1.15 for Livingston, for an example. The 700,000 for Olive Street. We're talking about what we can borrow. 1.5 obviously for this. That takes us beyond the maximum of 4.5. We spoke briefly about it before about pulling things forward. Maybe looking at reallocating funds. If we were in the happy position of winning every grant, we would certainly look at how we can fund it with savings to match the borrowing. Remembering that council does have the ability to look at things like the 756,000 in federal funding that has been in principle committed to Devonport Terrace. We hope that we'd leave it there as well, but we're simply saying we would come back, and if we felt that we couldn't responsibly advise council about borrowing, we would then ask you to, basically prioritise.
Yeah, just I can remind people who were here at the time and perhaps inform others that last time we had an embarrassment of riches in winning a grant for Prospect Oval and a grant for Prospect Road, and we'd already committed to spending $4 million on Churchill Road. The council had a huge deliberation and decided to break its long-term policy of no new borrowings, which quite frankly was a very odd policy. And secondly, to suspend all capital works for 2 years. In other words, use that money to match the grants rather than borrowing additional money. So we borrowed a bit and reallocated for the other bit. Some might argue coming in now that, well, all of your stuff is 2 years older than it should be because you didn't do that on time, but that was a decision that was made. So don't forget that we have options with capital works because we're always doing capital works. But if we defer something, you have to really think hard about how do you ever catch up. Of course, you could argue that Olive Street is a pull forward, maybe, but Livingston is years behind where we've wanted it to be. So, on the other hand, drains, we've been told for years we need to spend money on our stormwater system. Not this bit, but we've deferred expenditure on stormwater elsewhere. So I think, my view on this is be as prudent as you can, but when people are handing out grants, you just have to go for whatever you can. And the worst case scenario is you have to say no. And I would think we'd work incredibly hard to not do that. So I'm happy that the staff have worked us into this position. Rob?
Yeah, just given that we're adding D, so in number 2 here, we'll have to alter 4.5, part 2 there.
Yes. The advice of my discussion was no at this point because that's what the staff have developed in association with the audit committee's feedback, what we've workshopped, and if we can't achieve that, that needs to come back to us to make a decision about. And that would be a happy discussion to have.
Right.
But
when we win them all, we'll come back with some options.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So through you, Chair, at the moment, should we be able to dispose of the asset that we've spoken about, 4.5 is relatively comfortable from the point of view of the audit committee. It may well be if we have an embarrassment of riches, we might revisit that as long as that other asset is sold.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but we've only got a couple of minutes left in the time, but that would take it up to about 6 million instead of 4.5. So I said my recommendation was just leave it as it is, because we don't have the analysis on a $6 million, and we might not need a $6 million borrowing facility. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Just wait to see what we get.
Correct. One last question before we head
yes, I just have a question about the wording of there where it's got it will not exceed 4.5 million. So that means if it does, and that we have to, even with the information, have to rescind that and then have another.
What that we could
it says will means it definitely will not. But if you had from borrowing council should not exceed or something, I don't know, that legality, the legal.
See,
we would, if we had the embarrassment of riches and we then felt that having looked at every other cost saving and bringing things forward, we had to exceed 4.5. That's a insurance policy for council that you're saying to me as the CEO, I cannot exceed 4.5 in borrowings until you reconsider them.
So you have to come back and we then do that. That's all right.
Yes, I think either way you have to come back. Yeah. I'm just trying to think while the CEO was speaking, what other word could we put in there that makes it sufficiently fluffy that he wouldn't have to come back? I don't think there is another word.
No.
So
and through you, Chair, I would want to come back.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we'll now come back into session. We have the additional item D on there, which puts us with a slightly revised recommendation. Somebody happy to move that way? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, look, really excited. Obviously, lots of potential opportunities for state and federal funding. I do thank the staff for all the work that's gone into this, and obviously it has been a moving feast. But I do thank the staff for everything that's been presented to us in previous workshops, and also do thank the council for its support, particularly of looking at Broadview Oval in the east as a community hub, because in the east we do have limited opportunities for community hubs. You can look at what we're doing and trying to beautify and activate the Collingwood Shopping Centre. When you actually think, and obviously we've got Nailsworth Hall, but when you really do look in the east, we do have limited opportunities where we can really maximise an excellent or a community hub for the future, and obviously this being one of them. So I do thank, I do hope that the council, considering other recommendations tonight, do support this. Obviously, it's a subject to the state coming in and part funding it as well, because as we've said in previous items with the master plan, it's too big of a thing to do without state, federal money and potentially other organisations chipping in as well. So this really, these projects are really contingent on getting state and federal money. So I do endorse this. I think there's a good variety of projects there. Happy to obviously go with the revised, if it's up there, the revised recommendation to include D, and hopefully capitalise on some extra federal money. And really happy where this is at.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? You may wish to speak to it.
Can I ask a quick question first?
Yep.
So the money's one thing. Have we considered the capacity to play our part in delivering these projects on time? Because, we've got business as usual activities that we're undertaking, and I'm assuming that these projects, should we be successful, need to be delivered over a constrained period of time. If we factored in our capacity and we're confident that we can deliver them to the standard that we're expecting to.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I think I'll refer that to the Director.
Through the Chair, if we got all four, it'd be interesting. But no, we have discussed whether we could outsource the project management of these roles. as part of the funding structure. It's something we have to consider if we got all four, how we're going to deliver it. But yes, we have discussed it in general that we could deliver it.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Director, the 4.5 for, say, the drainage, would that incorporate a project management amount? Do we know, Vincent?
There'd be enough in there for that, yes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Great, that's good to hear that we've considered that and we can plan around being on time. Well, these are a good range of projects. They cover the whole of the city from a benefit point of view, different benefits for different groups of people. Some of them are addressing long-term problems and some of them are getting ahead of the game and some of them are below the ground. And, you know, once they're done, you know, you don't see them, you don't really know, but some of them are above the ground and they're keystone projects that will should we be successful, we'll look back upon in 5-10 years' time, and I think we'll be really happy with the work that we've decided to put forward here. So thanks to the staff for, at short notice, putting a lot of work into preparing these proposals, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes of the funding announcements.
Thank you. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Ripp, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, and just to obviously note that with any grant as opportunities, as the staff would be well aware, it's a marketing and comms exercise as well as it's the planning work that goes into this. So I really do hope we're going far and wide once these applications are put in to really promote and really sell why the City of Prospect deserves these, because I know there'll be a lot of councils putting in a lot of grants. I really hope that we've put some real serious thought into the marketing and comms side of it as well.
Yep, thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. I thought I'd be so excited about a drain. 10.7, Disability Access and Inclusion Plan 2021 to 2025. There are three parts. Part 3 is recommending that we appoint myself and 2 councillors to a proposed Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Group as per priority 4.1 on page 138. In order to get nominations for that, I'll just ask you to suspend meeting procedures until 8:45 should be needed. All those in favour? Against? It is thus suspended. Do we have any nominations? Councillor Barnett.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Twee Nguyen, one position.
Councillor Nguyen, you happy to be nominated? Accept that. Thank you. Do I have any further nominations? Councillor Nguyen.
To nominate Councillor Christina Barnett.
Other end of the court. Councillor Barnett, you happy to accept that?
Yes.
Return service.
Nomination. Thank you. Have any further nominations?
I've Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, happy to accept nomination?
Yes, I am. Yep.
We need some ballot papers, CEO. We have 3. Are there any further nominations? Deputy Mayor.
We're playing doubles tennis here, so I'd like to nominate Councillor Alan Harris.
Councillor Harris, you're happy to accept nomination?
Yes. Yes.
Why don't we just say the whole council?
Anybody not want to be nominated?
What about the former?
It's great to see the level of interest in this. Are there any nominations? We have 4.
Do we have any indication from the 4 that are nominated about their, say, knowledge, background or whatever in terms of disability?
Inclusion.
Planning?
Always
Maybe that.
one to ask people if they wish to speak. We're suspended until 8:45 for the purposes of taking nominations and conducting a ballot. Would people like to hear from each of the candidates, or you have sufficient knowledge? And don't see any huge nods. So I think in the main people are happy just to make a vote. Councillor Barnett.
Yeah. Yes.
If we should so choose, could we say something?
Just
Councillor Pearce.
Just a question, is there any reason why we can't have all 4?
That's a very good question. CEO, the recommendation is for 2 plus mayor. I presume a whole swag of other people who are either disabled or specialists in this area. The question from Robin is there any reason we only have to have two?
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
There's no reason we couldn't have 3 or 4. It just means, you don't want a advisory group to be too large. Have, sort of 4 community members. If we had 4 and then another 4 elected members plus the mayor, it's quite a big group. But not suggesting that they'd all be on the way to 10.
So through you, Chair, there's nothing that would prevent it, and it shows a pretty big commitment to this area of that's very, very important. So yes, the short answer is no. No reason.
And after all, we are community representatives as well.
Kind of in your hands, elected members. People happy to keep it at 2, or would you prefer that we accepted 4 nominations as 4 members and accept goes with that?
The only thing I'd say, because I'm not going to say about myself, because then everyone else can say about it, that sometimes some of these things, if you have too many, because I'm assuming, and I've made this assumption, that there will be disabled representatives from other places on it, and it just makes it fairly large. That would be the only thing I'd say against it. Apart from that, I think it's a good idea. So
I would suspect from the forums I've conducted under the Mayor's Disability Forum thing that we would have 8 people straight away who'd want to be on it, who are disabled. That'd be kind of, I would have thought. Directors kind of agreeing. They might not all turn up every time. Disabled or their carers, yeah. And that's a very good range of disabilities in that representation. They haven't been the same people both times, but that's about the number we get, and they are very keen when they get here to be part of something. So, yeah.
I think we should go for 2.
2,
yeah.
Question.
Yep.
A bit like we had with the CAP, can you have a kind of person who comes in?
A proxy?
Deputy.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Sure. We could say the other 2 are the proxies. That would be one way of dealing with it, I guess.
1 to 4 and then basically have some.
Yeah, 2 in and 2 proxies. That's a suggestion. Yeah. Stephen?
Yeah, I feel, going on for other comments, that it's best with this one to stick to 2 for those to, I don't repeat, but yeah, addressing the early comments.
Okay. I'm getting a vibe, because we're out of session, that 2 is where we should stick, but does anybody mind the idea of having the other 2 as alternates? So we always have our council representation filled.
Happy with that.
Makes sense.
It's a bit difficult without knowing what the role on the advisory board is, because I'm assuming that it's so with CAP, it's you're dealing with some stuff, and then the next time you're dealing with some new stuff, and then the next time you're dealing with some new stuff, some things come back, obviously. But by the sounds of it, this is an ongoing process. Probably nothing wrong with having proxies, but I think that the 2 people elected to be on this group would really have to make a strong commitment to attend.
I'm assuming that would be the case. There's a whole stack of stuff you'll see in the plan that needs to be implemented, and I'm assured by staff a lot of it is staff time or policy changes. There'll be some items that'll need funding that'll come to us as budget bids in time, but a lot of it is just the diligence of making sure that stuff gets done and listening and responding, I presume, to things that arise. So it's not sheep stations, but I'm really happy there's a lot of interest.
Yes, well, surely that means that if we can get the widest amount of people representing various sections, like in policy or actual, having that experience and being in that position, as some of us, I know Councillor Twee and myself have been, and dealing with that as a
just your speech.
Sounds suspicious like a speech, doesn't it?
Speech.
Score review.
Well, I'm just trying to say that surely if you've got the interest, you should be, and you'd want to have, you could have a reflection, of the different experiences and knowledge and whatever, by either having 4 or having the 2 plus the deputies for
that Christine has convinced me with people knowing a lot of stuff that I'll pull out. Because I think it should only be two. And I don't want us to all fight against each other.
It's a civil vote.
Okay,
Stay there, mate.
I'll back in.
I'm not seeing a move to go to 4. I don't see enough support there. I'm happy to consider that there could be 2 proxies and someone can move that way as an amendment to what's here and make that test the floor if they want to. Are there any other questions or comments before we go to a ballot? And Mark.
So just for clarity, are we voting for 2 people? Because if we do preferential voting, I feel for whoever's going to be counting votes because it'll be very difficult. I presume we'd just vote
Just voting for 2. Yep.
So we put 1-1.
2 ticks, 2 crosses, 2 poor marks, 2 asterisks, 2 somethings.
Just unless I've probably missed it in the report, can I just find out how often, because obviously it is going to be quite a commitment for the group, how often is the group planning to meet and when those type of details? I think it's important.
Yeah, I have asked that. As far as I understand, it's not yet defined.
We do have a draft terms of reference, but that's not going to be the first job of the meeting to decide that terms of reference. I envisage quarterly sort of meetings. We have to report to the minister annually. So that's an obvious reporting mechanism, but I imagine quarterly meetings referring to the action plan.
Okay. I think that's going to be important.
Okay. Any further questions before you mark your ballot paper? If not, please mark 2 names.
I'm starting hungry. I'm imagining things.
So you put a big tick and a little tick for first and second choice.
I might cut my finger and use my blood, or I might wait for a pen. Is that a clean pen or is that a...
It's Alison's and Alison's used, I've used it. So.
You don't know what, do we?
Voting for.
Contagion, I watched that in the weekend.
And yes.
Going to email.
So we have to write, we don't write anything voting for.
No, don't worry about it. Just put. Yesterday at the Australia Day Awards, the MC was spraying Glen 20 at the mic. Came on for the first few
Sweat's dripping off.
Yeah, then she forgot.
We'll just bring in Anthony Green to count the votes. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Could you
Anthony Green to count the votes? Have you? No prediction. Where's the graph?
Just while we're waiting. Yes. So the MC sprayed the mic for the governor. Very sensible. For the premier. Very sensible. For the chair of the Australia Day Council. Very sensible. And then on a very ad hoc basis for everyone after that. Whether they remembered it or not. It's very funny. And spraying Glen 20 in a mic that's live. So
Then sprayed over the audience. Smelt it.
I think that'll be just.
The question that came into my mind was what was there before Glen 20? Was it Glen 19?
What's Glen 20? What's the 20 stand for?
That joke. Well, that was a question. It wasn't a joke. It was that the 20th attempt to get it right?
I sent out the number of relatives.
Same for WD-40 then, David.
Glen 2, like a vast improvement on the first one.
I reckon that actually stands for
One of those really good.
I think WD-40 actually says.
20.
I don't know how to get up.
This is where it's going to come into.
You said WD-40. I
Could have been
said
conspiracy theory there. Yeah, could have been.
Even where is that, Sue?
Maybe a brand, maybe something that all the others, there have been other Glen 19s of other things that have
Could have been too, like the number plates. Yeah, you couldn't get a trademark on Glen 18 or 19 or 17.
Yeah.
Why Glen? Why Glen? Why? So many questions.
Oh,
You say you're going.
Glen, a forest.
Actually, just so you know, WD-40, it was the 40th formula.
Tell them.
Yeah.
Was it what? 40th formula. There you go. Yeah. What does WD? What does WD stand for?
Awards.
Ah, water displacement.
If I said that to her, she'd have been like, looking at me like,
Okay. Yeah, Uppy 7. Maybe it was it the same thing. Water repellent. I presume.
if it's a couple of months later, she'll be able to start things. But Olivia's so bad with this.
Version 7.
She's supposed to sleep 7 invented.
What about answered the Glen 20 question yet?
What is
rocket propulsion fuel?
I wish I'd invented the biro.
She's doing it.
and UB40 stands?
I reckon she's going to call a couple of times.
And UB40? What does the name come from?
No, you better tell us pretty quick. No, we're over time. We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait till afterwards. of the 4 candidates, and thank you for all 4 nominations. That's hopes and dreams. Fantastic. The 2 with the highest number of votes were Councillor Harris and Councillor Nguyen. So we'll take us back into formal session. Someone wants to move that way, and if someone wishes to consider that the other 2 candidates be proxies, that will be dealt with by an amendment by somebody down the track, not the mover or the seconder. Is somebody happy to move that way with those 2 names in there? Councillor Groot, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you for the 4 people who nominated. I think it does demonstrate a real commitment to this this issue, and I think it's really important for us as a council to have the plan. Obviously, we're legislated requirement to have it, but the fact that we've got it is very important. Well done to Councillor Harris and Councillor Nguyen, and congratulations to Councillor Larwood and Barnett as proxies, which I'm sure someone might or might not move as an amendment.
I'm so now you said that. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Rip.
Yeah, again, to thank for the 4 people for nominating and for the interest, and to congratulate Councillor Harris and Nguyen. It obviously will be quite a commitment, and really do appreciate the 4 nominating and 4 people being willing to commit to this. So thanks again.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you. But I don't need to say thank you, because I think the whole 4 people would have done a good job as well. I was going to, before I knew this was all going to happen, I was originally going to move this because I sort of take this bit as a bit to heart. And in doing so, there's 2 words that are in there that I felt perhaps shouldn't be there, but I do understand life as it is. And when I was talking about what we're going to do, what we can do, what we shouldn't do, all those things, we use the words something about depending on the budget caring, depending on the budget, I think is the word, something in there. It was along that I think something like this, a disability thing, restraints of the budget restraint. That if we're going to do something, we're going to build a footpath on Alpha Road, we're going to build a footpath on Alpha Road, and it's no different if someone's in a wheelchair or in Northern. So budget restraint was the only words I wanted to make a comment on. And I know we have to do things by law, but it again makes me feel proud of the people sitting around this table, that people want to try and help and make life as equal and as good for others. So thank you, 1. 2, I'm proud of all of you for what you do.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment that the other 2 nominees be proxies.
Thank you. And the words would be something along the lines of, and that Councillor Barnett and Deputy Mayor Larwood be proxy elected member representatives. CEO, does it work for you?
Yeah, I'm just watching it now. The proxy representatives when the appointed members are not available to attend.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Is that what you're moving?
That's great. Yep.
You wish to speak to that before I ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate?
Well, not really. I mean, it's just great that 4 people are so keen and interested in it. It's great. So I take Matt's point that it probably is more of a continuation, but be as it is may, I think if people aren't available, it's good to have someone to take their place.
Indeed. Is customary. I'll ask the mover. Councillor Groot, if you're happy to incorporate.
No. I mean, yes.
And messes.
It's too early.
Yeah. Yes, it is. That's a yes. Councillor Rip, you happy to incorporate?
Absolutely, yes.
Seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate the change? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thus becomes part of the motion. Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Is anything further?
No.
Okay. Any further debate? No. Councillor Groot, do you wish to sum up?
I just want to say two things. One, again, congratulations to those successful. Just encourage the committee as they start exploring how we implement the plan to think about how we use language for people with disability. And one of the biggest misconceptions is people say people someone with a disability. It's actually some people with disability. It's a very subtle change, but so it's very important. I've noticed even tonight as we've been talking, people are saying people with a disability. It's an identity-first language approach that people take within the sector. So I just encourage the committee to look at how to embrace that language as part of what council does and as part of implementing a very good plan. So I certainly commend the motion to everyone.
Excellent. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Oh, that's very exciting. Start another Mayor's Forum for something and see what happens with it. And a Mayor's Forum for real estate agents complaining about copper pipe theft on empty tenancies. I'm not sure that'll give rise to this sort of outcome.
Oh, that's very popular on Nextdoor.
It's not good. 10.8, revocation of building inspection policy legislation change. Recommendations on page 146. There is a slight revision, and part 3 is up there. So just change the words slightly. CEO, it's a technical issue, as I understand.
Yes, through you to the Acting Director, Scott.
Just a brief reason why part 3 was changed.
Through the Chair, changed in conversation with the governance officer around our policy manual and an issue where a policy within that manual was not aligned with the current legislation and should probably have previously been revoked.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Someone happy to move it its current form? Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
I have a question first.
Sure.
Just in regards to, I think it's page 146, when it's talking about percentage of, I suppose, inspections. Are we going to have to increase service levels with the new policy through the Chair?
CEO?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To the Acting Director.
Through the Chair, the compliance officer we've had doing our urban corridor zone inspection work has achieved accreditation level 4, allowing him to assist our building officer to deliver service within our current resource level.
Sorry, was that the nature of your question, Councillor?
Well, that raises another question. So is it costing us more to deliver this service level?
Thank you. CEO?
Yeah, through you.
Same part.
Through the Chair, no.
Thank you. And speaking to your motion, Councillor?
No, I'm just supportive of it.
Very good. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
Yes, I'm pleased that we do have this, even though some of it's brought about by legislation change, but we were, we have responded to particularly this matter, which has raised a lot of issues amongst quite a few residents, particularly down around Devonport Terrace and around Churchill Road and Prospect Road. As I say, I think that it's very good for us to have this. Still getting some other issues that aren't covered by this, but I might bring that up another day. And that's just another complaint from a few residents about how the building, the staff that are on site treat some of the neighbours and things like that. But I did find out there was a report in our local paper about how one can refer that to the Building and Construction Association, whatever it is. Yeah. So anyway, very happy that we have this.
Thank you. Do I have any further debate? Councillor De Backer, do you see you need to sum up? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 10.9, draft amendments to development and associated public realm corridor, urban corridor enforcement policy, prompted by a recent council resolution. The recommendations are page 172 to 173. Somebody happy to move it in its current form?
I am.
Right, Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
Not a whole lot. I did send some questions in today and I got answered. And between this and even the previous one that we just done, when you look at some of the compliances places, do the large percentages that aren't done. And I think we've taken great steps to follow these processes over the last couple of years now that I think it benefits our residents. So I'm happy to go along with this.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor DeBacker, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Further debate? Just from the chair, I have mentioned to the CEO that I'm not quite sure where I sit with this. It is going out for consultation, so there's a chance to revise it on the way through. But it didn't read of zero tolerance to me. It read like a policy document which is open to interpretation, and I think we're all past interpreting. We want action, and I'd like to see it significantly tightened. So there are some things in here that say, traffic management is an issue, but the words say council may require a traffic management plan. Well, in my view, anything 2 stories or over on a main road, you must have a traffic management plan. I don't want to see anyone not do one, because every one that gets built is a nightmare for us as elected members, and it must be for staff and neighbours. Similarly, the zero tolerance and non-conformance with planning approval conditions, I didn't read in there. The language is not strong like that. Some parts of it are reflected, but the theme didn't wash through the document in the way that I thought I'd be comfortable with, and I wasn't sure what your feelings were. So I think we'll see what happens during public consultation. I'm not sure who will respond to it in the consultation phase, but at least we'll get a chance for it to, a bit more reflection on it before we do a final approval. Just so my initial thoughts. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Harris, do you wish to sum up?
Well, I'll sum up them differently, but because I saw the zero tolerance in there, and I'll be honest, by not reading the whole document, now you've frightened me, because I am a strong believer in zero tolerance. And if you say traffic management, water management things, and these, to me, and I believe I read it there, our setup should be 100%, or if not 110%, to make things decent. So I do read it as zero tolerance of people that are building things not complying. Now, if that's not in there strong enough, and if it comes up again, I will vote that way. But it's solely that I thought I read it like that, and that in my heart is what I meant when I endorsed this, that if you're wrong, you're wrong. That's the end of the story. You'll be punished. So that's what I'm doing, but I'm doing it as the words that are there, so I move it as it is.
Yeah. Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Sorry, no questions after summing up. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously to go to consultation. Zero tolerance is in the report, but not in the policy. So it'll come back to us. General business, urgent business, item 11. Is there any urgent business, noting that it can't be considered unless everyone agrees that it's urgent business? No, good. Item 12, reports for information. We've adopted a protocol that only those withdrawn for discussion are discussed, otherwise they're voted on block. I wish to withdraw item 12.1 for a correction to the mayoral monthly activity report. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the audit committee meeting minutes?
Yes, please.
Vine Plaza upgrade update. Does anybody wish to withdraw it? Councillor De Backer. Thank you. Item 12.4, the Growth Corridor Report 3 6-monthly update report. Anybody wish to withdraw that one? No. Item 12.5, process for the Prospect Innovation Awards 2021. Deputy Mayor wishes to withdraw that one. So I ask someone to move that we adopt 12.4 without any further discussion. Councillor Groot, do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, there is no discussion. All those in favour? Against, it is carried. Thank you. Item 12.2, the Mayoral Monthly Activity Report. There's a note in there that I have met with the Lord Mayor about the Adelaide Aquatic Centre. That meeting was scheduled and therefore listed but did not occur. So that item needs to come out. It reads, attended the opportunities for North Adelaide Parklands Mayor's discussion at the Adelaide City Town Hall. Regrettably, because I've been asking for that for at least 6 months, probably longer. So someone happy to move that report be adopted without that item. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does anybody, sorry, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Any further debate? Committee meeting minutes. Councillor Ripp, do you wish to move it in its current form?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I just want to take this note to thank, obviously, the council members who attended or either one of the physical meetings or zoomed in while they were occurring. So thank you for your interest, and elected members who couldn't make it but said that they had read all the information. Thank you for your interest. Also like to thank the staff for the background work that went into the last 2 audit committee meetings. They were quite heavy, the things that the audit committee had to digest, and I know the staff dealing with lots of moving feast with the state and federal grants. Thank you for your work to prepare models and prepare things for the committee. I'd also like to particularly thank the Mayor and also the independent members who had to really digest a lot of information and come to us and give us some pretty, we asked them to give us some pretty solid recommendations and guide us in terms of our borrowing capacity, to review our targets, and they came up with the 12 or 13 recommendations. They put a lot of time into reading this. And I know the chair, I believe in her own time, the chair, Corinne Garrett, actually came to council and really worked through it to understand it in her own time. So I'm very grateful to Corinne for doing that, and the background work the independent members put into it. So I'd almost, if possible, I suppose can't do it moving it, but if someone wants to move an amendment, just to note the independent members' time that went into this, it would probably be good, because I know that particularly the chair put a lot of time into this. But I'll leave it at that. Want to move it as is, but yeah, I think I'm very grateful for them for it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
Just quickly, as I mentioned earlier, I was very impressed with the. In particular, the chair. I think she directed it in a very professional manner, and should be commended. That's it.
Thank you. Best speech ever.
Thank you very much.
Any further debate? Councillor Ripson, you need to sum up. No, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Vine Plaza upgrade update. Councillor De Backer, do you wish to move it in its current form?
Probably a few questions first, if that's okay.
Take a couple of questions, yeah.
Yeah, so just on the flag poles where they are, because I noticed the bollards are going, does an emergency vehicle able to gain access through there, through the chair?
Presume not, but I'll CEO.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the Director.
Chair, not through the top section of Vine Plaza. If there's emergency access required, they come up through the bottom end of Vine Plaza.
Okay.
For Prospect Road, I presume, which is...
Yep. No, it's just a question because I had chains before. And just on the catenary lighting, are they going to be sort of changeable LED lights, like sort of coloured, or are they just like a one colour?
Mono colour, I think, CEO.
Yes, sorry, through you, I think to the Manager of Special Projects.
Through the chair, just a single colour, so white.
Like by the cinema. Yes. Thank you. Councillor, you wish to move it in its current form?
I won't move it.
Okay, do I have someone else wish to move it? Councillor Barnett. Wish to speak to it?
Yes. So I note that a proposed children's nature play area will be part of another report coming to council. Also, the project cost is anticipated to keep to the $400,000 budget, and that there will be 2 stages. So, and that it will reuse the existing pavers. So I'm very pleased about some of those points, and that it will add value to the council and as a community asset and activation of the area, which I think we're quite keen to see more activation. And it would do this by activating the town hall basement, improved outdoor dining opportunities, encouraging future private investment in redeveloping the southern building, one just across the road, which we don't own, but we hope that this will encourage that, and rejuvenation of the space tied to the Prospect Road Village Heart landscaping theme. And from attachment 1, I note that there was arbour details on the eastern end, but because we've got the flagpoles there now, they're removed from the scope. But on checking with the director, I think that's some other information about that is coming later, a later report. So I commend the upgrade to you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Further debate? Councillor Rip.
First of all, just a question. Can I just check on the timeframes for this and if this is quite delayed, the upgrade of where that's sitting versus what was initially supposed to be, I guess, delivered to where we are now? Because I'm just concerned that this could be running quite late, but I could be wrong.
Yes, through you, Chair. Director.
Through the Chair. Stage 1 of the upgrade was meant to commence end of last financial year, and stage 2 was meant to commence at the start of this financial year. So essentially to the community, it was one project, but it was spread over 2 financial years. Due to the refinement of the plan, a number of iterations of that plan, that we've had to delay the commencement of the project, and they're due to commence. Sorry. 2nd of February, the contractors are due to come in, commence work.
And I mean, I just want, obviously, the best result that we can for this area, because obviously we've just tonight approved state government grant opportunities, and we're going to have a whole list of projects starting. So can I get some assurances from the staff that you can, if we do get the grant opportunities, you can deliver all these and this project together, considering this is already running quite late? I just want to make sure that we are going to be able to deliver it, because we've got stuff that hasn't started that should have, that's also going to be added into the mix if we're successful.
CEO.
Thank you. A good question, Councillor. We've talked about this. Director, you want to add any comments? Certainly, what we didn't answer was the time frame to finish Vine Plaza. Can you add that in?
For the Chair, 26th of April, closing date. If we were to receive any of those grants that we've discussed earlier in the meeting, those projects will be commencing before that date.
They'd be post the completion of the current Vine Plaza project.
That is all going well. That date actually is met. Yeah.
Anything further, Councillor? Councillor Group.
Just a question in relation to the children's play area. The report on page 195 states that a further report will be presented to council. When is that likely to come back to council, and how material is that, given that you'll be starting next week or 2 weeks' time?
Good question.
So again, through you, Chair, to the Director.
The Chair will bring a report back to the February council meeting in that regard, in that play space. The bones of the project will not change necessarily. with either the two proposed locations of the play space. If we, for example, the bottom area, if that was it, just replacement of plants with a play space. So we don't think it's going to necessarily, it won't, the council does make a decision one way or the other at the February council meeting. We don't think it'll interrupt the schedule of the program for the project.
Thank you.
So I just want to be really clear, that's definitely coming back to February. Because my other option that's going on in my head is I move an amendment to lock it into coming back to February, but I won't do that. There's an absolute ironclad commitment that's coming back.
I understand it's ironclad, Councillor.
Thank you. Nothing
And
further.
sorry, through you, Chair. Look, at the end of the day, the job will proceed as tendered. These are relatively minor amendments, subject to Council's view. You know, some of them are as small as putting little fairy house doors on trees, or a little bit more than that, but we don't believe it will interrupt the process at all.
Councillor? No, look, that's fine. I believe in the fairy magic, so it's all good.
You all know that. Further debate? Just from my perspective, I've made it pretty clear that I'm not at all happy with where this is at, how long it's taken, the fact that it's late, the fact that the play equipment's not been resolved, the fact that we've had 3 deputations and 1 petition, and there's still not a stitch of play equipment shown on the drawings. I'm pretty unhappy about it. I've said that behind the scenes. I'm giving you a little taste of what I've passed on. I think that's been heard. I take the ironclad commitment being, I think that's what we've heard to, it will be absolutely here in February.
Yes.
And I'm assured by staff that it won't cause an embarrassment cost-wise, even though it will be incorporated later. I find that inadequate would be the least I can say about that. But that's the position we're in. I don't want to delay it any further. We've got to get on with it. There's a lot riding on the outcomes of this thing, and I hope it's a successful outcome. But I'm incredibly disappointed with the status of this report. Its timing, the fact that it's not already finished, and the fact that we seem to, well, we look like we've ignored what our community representatives have asked us to do, which we're assured were fairly modest things. So anyway, enough said. Any further debate? Okay, Councillor Rip, do you wish to sum up?
I think
Sorry, wrong one.
I got it wrong. I thought, okay, did I move it? I was sitting there going, did I move it? Okay.
Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
Sorry, I was going to say maybe I just go home.
You will, hopefully in a moment. Yeah.
Yes, well,
Sorry,
event. No, that's all right. I think it's always good to have a bit of humour. I just commend it to people. I mean, as the Mayor has said, like, you know, just let's get on and do it. And I'm sure once it's done, you know, it'll be quite a good a community interactive type of facility. I think we should be we're aiming at.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. Item 12.4, Growth Corridor Report's been done. 12.5, the process for the Prospect Innovation Awards 2021, put out by the Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to move it?
I will move it, and I have a couple of questions.
Questions?
Ahead of that.
Yep, far away.
Okay. So I guess my questions aren't necessarily around the process moving forward, but about the reflection of the first round of the Innovation Awards. I'm a strong supporter of this, and I'm pleased to be involved at the level I am. But I would like to ask a couple of questions with regards to the acquittal process for the people who received funding in the first round. So that's, I've got a few questions, so I'll ask about what that looks like.
Yep, sure.
Can I ask about the acquittal process?
Is there one?
Yeah, well, is there one, and what does it look like?
CEO?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the Director.
Thank you, through the Chair and to the Deputy Mayor. There is an acquittal process that will be at the end of this financial year. However, we've been receiving reports with progress on each of the projects, and the physio project is yet, I'm still waiting for a report, but the One Up Digital project by Jason Chung, Prospect Road Trivia Crawl, has had 3 events, including one of them getting in the Advertiser. the Blackfriars Backyard Poultry event has been totally completed. Unfortunately, a fox got into the chook tractor and killed some of the chooks. But Henry Green actually saw that as a positive. The children got some new chickens and said, "Look, that is a business lesson. Things go up, things go down." So we've actually got a report. We've yet to get a financial report from the Blackfriars group, and then the other one, the business continuity planner. They've developed a web-based solution to look at vulnerabilities in people's business plans, and that is really seen as quite a good one for COVID. They've adapted it from a project they've done with the Department of Health, and they've made it more suitable for Prospect, and they'll launch that at the Prospect Business Leaders meeting on the 19th of February, and that'll be made available to Prospect businesses for free for 3 months.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for the acquittal notes. The question was there an acquittal process?
There will be an acquittal process
going forward.
Sign off on all those projects. And the one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was the nature of the question, not what were the outcomes. But thank you for sharing them with us, Deputy Mayor.
Second question, will we receive a detailed report including a summary of media interest and PR, social media, number of people who applied for the various categories, and a way of selling future budget bids, supporting selling future budgets?
Yes, we can do that.
You take that as a quick yes. Further questions, Deputy Mayor?
One more. Well, okay. I've finished with my questions.
Right, okay.
And I would now like to
speak to your motion.
Speak to my motion. Thank you very much. Good. As I said before, I'm a big supporter of this, but I think it falls in the category of one of those parts of what we do that I don't want to speak on behalf of other elected members, and maybe not everyone's as convinced. So for this to continue to be part of this particular strategy, and for it to continue to get funding, it's going to have to grow in my mind. The first round that we did was about learning the appetite. Have we got the right categories? Are we promoting it the right way? What outcomes are we getting? We need to learn from that. And I would like to think that for this to continue to be funded, because it's $15,000 plus the work that goes into it, so it's not an insignificant amount of money, that it's going to have to grow in stature and scale each year and become something that's quite widely known and recognised as another great Prospect thing. I think it's got the potential for that, but it is going to have to achieve those goals, I think, for it to continue to be funded. I hate funding something for a year and then going, oh, we've done that, let's move on to something else. We need to give it some life, but we also need to be realistic about, what sort of expectations we've got. It'd be good to see KPIs around number of people applying. It'd be good to see KPIs around the amount of media interest that we generate through it, because otherwise we may be patting ourselves on the back for something which isn't necessarily striking a strong chord. So I think that, it's a great start. The next year will no doubt improve, but I'd like to see some of those things around acquittals and reporting and KPIs and those kind of things built into the process to ensure that we're all comfortable spending money in this area moving forward.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor de Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, look, I really support the awards, and we're looking at the process around this, but I guess it'd be really interesting to have a bit of a work group around it and just throw some ideas around, because I agree with the Deputy Mayor. I think it needs to be a bit bigger, and whether it's, sometimes we keep them sort of separate, but, innovation in design, or, innovation in science, or innovation in, creative arts, or whatever it is. It could be slightly broader. Obviously a business is, you're getting paid for doing something, but I think it might be good to get more people in to see how to get to there, because a lot of people are on the periphery, but it'd be really nice to have them actually sitting at the table seeing what some of these great people are doing. And I didn't see enough of that probably at the last award ceremony. Mind you, that was very COVID safe, so thank you for pulling that off. But I think, if we're able to, fill a theatre with people that are maybe on the periphery, that could be me in 5 years' time when I've finished studying. So how do we get those people involved? Almost like innovation interns, get some students around it or something like that. So I'd be happy to be part of a work group or a just general discussion on how we can take it to the next level.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett?
Yes, just quickly, I think this is a very good way for us to go and take on board what Deputy Mayor and Councillor Backer have said. And I just think, it's always, it could be even innovative to have some, if they're willing to do that, some of the award recipients, like some TED talk or something, just to, I don't know, make it a bit more sort of splash in the media. And yeah, so there are perhaps some other ideas.
Thank you. Further debate? Deputy Mayor, wish to sum up?
No, thanks.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? This is carried unanimously. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any? No, that being the case, some motions on notice. We have one, 14.1, Councillor Harris, support of UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons Treaty.
Do you need me to read the whole 5 points?
No.
Thank you. And I thank the people that have read it, and I particularly thank Christina that done a lot of this stuff in here. So, number one in it. I wanted to move it, and there's unlucky enough for Americans, but lucky enough for us, it gives me areas to comment. That when we received the letter from Steve, he asked us to endorse a letter going to Morrison and various other people, but particularly our government, to take a certain attitude. Some of the younger ones sitting around the table here, and not just so much younger in age, younger in things, Prospects had a good history of trying to support people and various causes for people's health. They actually used to store uranium here up behind your two houses, but thankfully Prospect took a stand against nuclear power and various things. So we've got a history of it. To endorse the thing that's supposed to happen on the 22nd actually sort of had happened yesterday, that they have already come and as a stand, the United Nations has taken a stand against any form of nuclear weapons for protection, etc. But in our case, our government hasn't yet made that decision. And so this letter is calling on our government to make that decision. Now, I'm lucky now, as opposed to before. Quite often an argument comes back, the good guys have to have these things to protect them from the bad guys, and vice versa. Certain countries will not abide by this. Possibly North Korea and Iran and a few others might not abide by this sort of decision and that. But I've been lucky enough that we've had an election in America, and the president that leaves tomorrow, I think, or tonight, I think he was capable of being one of the good guys that would also put his finger on the trigger. He had the power, and lucky enough he's gone before that happens. So what we're doing, and whether it helps or not, but I think it helps us to have that caring attitude that we'll call on this government and say, put your signature down there, make a commitment. And we've got not nuclear weapons, or we've got medicine, but not nuclear weapons and power. But we got Pine Gap, we got Narungga, we got places that help the finger of America in particular, and Britain, but particularly America, to have these powers. So we're calling on our government to sign a document to become a party to oppose nuclear weapons, put them in the same category as chemical, biological weapons and mass things that kill human beings. So unless people go through and ask me sort of questions or go and make statements that I've got to answer, I'm just going to put it as that and urge people and ask you, please, think of not just the people in Prospect, but the people around the world, that we got to put an end to these sort of things, these mass destruction weapons.
Thank you. Second that, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Harris. As part of my role in Prospect Local History Group, I've been researching for our new continuing history book from the 1970s. So I thought, seeing the background wasn't in here, I'll just very briefly provide that to you. So in 1977, Prospect was among the 10 local governments in South Australia to have declared their municipalities a nuclear-free zone, with local nuclear-free zone declarations and signs, which were for many years were visible in Prospect. But apparently they made very good barbecue plates. So they kept on disappearing where we put them at our gateways. And they were seen as important public statements about the view of the council and its local community. In 1979, the Prospect Branch Campaign Against Nuclear Energy, CANE, was set up by Prospect residents. And then in 2006, Prospect Local Environment Group was established, which included some former members of the Prospect Nuclear Free Zone campaign, which ran from 1983 to 1985. It was formed to actively engage with local residents. This is the environment group. I think we know that. And the first public meeting held by Prospect Local Environment Group on its formation in 2006 attracted over 200 people to hear Dr. Helen Caldicott talk on nuclear power in response to a national inquiry. Now, Prospect Council, believe it or not, still has a nuclear-free policy or strategy, which I couldn't actually find, I don't think, in our strategies, but I did find it in a policy document that is on our website. So there are quite a few points which I'll give the link so that you can follow that up later. But basically, I think more pertinent to this particular motion is that part 2, Prospect Council wishes to ensure, as far as is possible, that the whole of the city is protected from any dangerous radioactive substance likely to endanger the physical health of its citizens. And so it goes forth. And I note that part 6, as a symbolic gesture, Council will erect Let's Keep Prospect Nuclear Free signs on the city boundaries on those poles that now carry the City of Prospect signs and so forth about the signs. But I think that needs to be revised because I don't think that happens. Anyway, so I commend this to you. It's, I think, good that local government is able, in a democratic country such as Australia, to be able to support their elected representatives, as Steve Georgianis, the federal member for Adelaide, seeking support, and other councils are also providing that support, I understand, to try and convince our Australian government to support the United Nations Treaty. And I sent around, and I think today, that the Graham Smith Peace group, who has some local members, has sent around the video link that will show that this is happening at the United Nations. So,
thank you. Further debate? Councillor Rip.
I'm just going to particularly whether the mover wants to sort of address some of these points in summing up, or the staff, if they have any background knowledge. I guess, concern with it. I haven't actually, not sure how I'm going to vote on this one yet, and this is probably you help sort of clarify this for me, Councillor Harris, would be really helpful. But I'd like to know, what does this, I guess, mean for countries that do sign it versus not signing it? What does this mean? I'd also like to know what would be the reason the Australian government doesn't sign it. Clearly, we're not defence experts, so there's the federal defence stuff that's probably confidential, safe. There'd be reasons why they would support it or not support the treaty. I don't know, because we don't unfortunately have that information. And I think, although the settlement, yes, of course, no one wants to see nuclear weapons or countries developing them. They are an unfortunate reality in the world. But equally, from my sort of read on this, I'm totally supportive of the settlement, but I think equally we don't like federal and state governments sort of dipping their toes into our business, and I feel like this is the role reversal the other way. Yes, if it's I guess part of it's embedded in our policy, that's actually helpful to know. I didn't know that, so thank you, Councillor Barnett, for that comment. So I can see I can absolutely see the pros to this, but I can also see the cons. I can see, the federal government saying, keep your nose out of our business. I can see it the other way. So I'm really torn with this one, because I'm supportive of the settlement. We don't want to see nuclear weapons, but I'm also, there would be, whether it would be good that we, something like this came to us earlier and we actually wrote to the federal government and actually sought their reasons why they're not signing it if they haven't signed it, because I could be voting on something tonight and there could be very good reasons why the federal government's not signing it, but I don't have that information here. So I'm really sort of torn with this one, what I'm going to do. And I'd like some clarification from the staff, if staff have background in this space, but equally I know the mover's very passionate about it as well. So in summing up, to hear his thoughts, because I'm just, hesitant with it.
Thank you. Further debate. Councillor Brute.
Just briefly, two things. First is in 2017, when ICANN won the Nobel Peace Prize, it was my great pleasure to be working with the Australian Red Cross at that time, who was involved in the development of the treaty. And so it's astounding that 3 years on, we still haven't actually signed the treaty. Mm-hmm. I think for me, this is a philosophical motion as much as it is a practical one. So our vote tonight is not going to make the government change its mind. But our vote tonight is going to send a very strong message about what we believe in as a council. And I think from my perspective, that's why I'll be supporting the motion. I'd go a step further, and I won't be moving an amendment to this, but I would encourage, once we have signed that letter, if we could maybe promote the fact that we have done that through our social media or other media, just to let our residents know exactly what our position is on this. Maybe in time we can also look at our signage around this issue. I know there's still a few of the very small barbecue plates on posts somewhere, but it might be something that we want to reinstate in a much more prominent way. So I'll certainly be supporting it. I had a small insight in my time at Red Cross into the importance of this. Particularly every year there's a day which commemorates the use of nuclear weapons, and it's a very moving day with different events that happen on that day. I was, again, privileged to be part of that for a couple of years. But certainly support the motion. Thank you, Councillor Harris, also for bringing this to Council tonight.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Backer.
Look, I'll support the motion. I'm always a bit, I never like seeing sort of federal members' names in motions and things like that. But certainly Prospect has a history of anti-nuclear. And I think we have to be really clear what this is for. This is about nuclear weapons. And for someone who's lived in Japan, certainly heard the stories and how it affects and still affects for years to come. And obviously, not just weapons, but also with things like the power stations, but that's another discussion. And I think we have to sort of put the two discussions together. This is about nuclear weapons, but we also have an anti-nuclear policy, and certainly there's whole other debates about, nuclear waste travelling through our city to get to Kimber. So, we
don't anymore. But
so we have to be aware of those kind of things. So I'm certainly supportive of the motion, and I agree that we do have to maybe put something out on social media, but not just where we're at, but where we've come from. So some of those old images and old documents, and showing the progression and why we're at that point. So thanks for bringing this, Councillor Harris, and I'll be supportive of the motion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
3 quick points. I remember those signs being put up, I don't know how many years ago, around Prospect, and it intrigued me that, as a young person, I probably thought, well, why would we do that? Because it's a small thing, and it's almost largely out of our control, but it was a statement that we were making at the time. And, I think that we should be thankful to the people back in the day who were active in that space for being so staunch and helping embed that as a part of almost our philosophy from a council point of view. Second point, I don't think that federal and state politicians have any qualms about sticking their nose in our business. There's a nose being stuck in our business on Saturday in Vine Street Plaza, and so from that perspective, I have absolutely no concern telling them how we feel about this. I think it's part of what we should be doing. I don't have any concerns about that. I think that we should be telling our residents, because I think if you think about this from the pub test point of view, I think that most people would be supportive of it, particularly as it's focused on nuclear weapons. So I have no problem supporting this motion.
Thank you. Further debate? And just from my perspective, I always exercise a great degree of caution around these issues when I was national president, because I didn't want to be misinterpreted as a national position unless the national board had voted on it. I'm no longer national president, and quite frankly, I agree with most of the speakers that our citizenry have been intrigued but supportive of our stance regarding nuclear anything in the city of Prospect. It's a very old campaign. I've never heard anyone say that they're against it, and it's part of who we are in a way. It's kind of, not whimsical, but it is part of the folklore of Prospect. This is a much more serious issue. That was about transporting nuclear materials through the city, which should, in part, those materials are going to be used for good in terms of nuclear medicine, but we still had an issue with it, and I don't disagree with that. This is talking about weapons of mass destruction. This is very, very clear. These aren't weapons that target a particular tank or a ship or a submarine manufacturing facility or an ammunition factory. These things aren't small enough to do that. They're designed to wipe out entire populations of babies, toddlers, children, school kids, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, mums, dads, aunties, uncles, brothers and sisters. That's what happens. I was lucky enough to go to Hiroshima and see what had happened there with what's now regarded as a minnow of nuclear weapons. It just makes you stop and think very, very hard. These weapons are not designed to attack soldiers, people that are professionally engaged in fighting on our behalf. They're engaged to attack citizens. And I just can't see how we can tolerate that as humans. I think it's just completely unacceptable. The USA fought a whole war against weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It's shown to be a complete fallacy, but they got the whole globe energised around that, about a particular weapon of mass destruction, whilst ignoring the ones that they had, which were far more powerful. It's a complete nonsense, complete double standards. I don't know why the Australian government haven't signed it, but I suspect it might be pressure from the people who run Narungga and Pine Gap, and I understand they might want that pressure, but it's our country, it's our community that I want to protect. I don't want us wiped out because someone thought they should blow up the sub facility, which brings good jobs for our country, who's decided to build non-nuclear subs. In fact, they're the largest capacity non-nuclear subs on the planet. They're very highly regarded as being the biggest diesel electric ones in the world because our country's so large. So, and I agree with the Deputy Mayor. Well, fancy saying we wouldn't do it because it's federal, not state. I mean, I kind of respect it at one level, but I lost all respect when the Prime Minister intervened to say we had to have citizenships on Australia Day. I mean, for goodness sakes, what a silly thing to say. And it made every other citizen you make, a citizen on days other than Australia Day feel diminished. And I thought that was completely unacceptable. Meanwhile, every state and the federal government announced the Australians of the Year, which you'd think would be announced on Australia Day, on every day before Australia Day. So I don't have, that doesn't stop me. I think it's about our local people. We're all at risk with this. There's still a huge amount of these weapons around the place, despite the work, very hard work done by the US and the Soviets over time to reduce the number of weapons out there, and I appreciate that work. But I think it's a fine motion, and I'm very happy to support it and be seen to be supporting it too. So thank you. Any further debate?
So can I just ask a brief question? I've spoken.
Yeah.
I presume we'll advise Steve Georgianis that we have done this. It does say we acknowledge the correspondence, but within that, I presume we'll let him know that we've written.
That's number 5.
Number 1.
They'll be covered. If his name's not there, it should be.
Sorry, in answer to your question, I'm happy to. Yep. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp, you have a question?
Just a very quick question. Knowing this, I mean, whether, Mayor, you would like to answer this or the administration, do you have any views as to why the federal government wouldn't have signed it? Like, honestly, what? Yeah, I mean, that's why I said what I said before, because I don't know. Yeah.
I only said in my speech because of pressure from the states regarding their facilities here. That's only conjecture. CEO, do you have a...
Look, the only thing I can think of is that Australia's signed up to a number of defence treaties, and many of those nations have nuclear weapons. And they may feel obliged, while they're part of those mutual defence treaties, not to have a position that criticises being nuclear armed. I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, that's why I said too what I said before, because I don't know.
I take those as non-definitive answers, but
no, I mean, I don't know. That's
both of ours. Yeah. Both of ours, yeah. If there's no further debate, Councillor Harris, would you like to sum up?
It's almost very similar to the way you answered it. Why didn't they sign it? Like everyone around here, I can't know the ins and outs of it, all the answers. But what I do know, our government has put a very strong allegiance to America. America would hate other states, countries, sort of opposing their powers. And so I think one of the major reasons is our alliance with some of those countries, but particularly America, to support them. We've got these facilities. We've got about 5. I only mentioned the 2 in South Australia, but up the northwest and those sort of thing. So we fit into that category, and we fit into a category of being attacked. Now, so I can't say why, but I know there's that allegiance, why they do the fair trade agreement, a whole list of other things that supports no one but America, not to support our farmers or anything. I did have, and I think I might be the only one in the room and you said you've been to Japan, might be different, but why part of the union movement, particularly with Jack Watkins, as we know, we got the park down here, we brought children from Chernobyl here, children. And now it wasn't a bomb situation, it was a plant situation. But I have seen personally what nuclear energy can do to human bodies, particularly children. And definitely what the Mayor said, these weapons aren't to knock out a tank or a group of soldiers down the end, it's to wipe out thousands and thousands of people. So any little bit that we can be part of something to say, you know, if the government says, well, we're not going to sign it because we want to make our own nuclear power, that might be different, but they're not saying that. So the only seeable reason that they're not signing is because of another allegiance, and it's one less signature. And I'm sure even countries that will sign this agreement will most probably renege on it if the situation comes. But if everyone sits back silent, it haven't. You know, David, and I shouldn't say that, the Mayor and Councillor Barnett, they point out a couple of bits of our history. And I'm trying, and I meant to get that map out of there. We had a little army depot thing down here where there's got the old folks home or that place in the green. They used to have nuclear stuff used to come there. Used to come from Radiant Hill, and then when they first started. So when this decision was made in Prospect, we actually stopped Prospect being used until they changed the railway setup to take the uranium stuff now that's coming from Roxbury Downs not to come through here, to cut, bypass it. And if every country does that little bit, if every group does that little bit, there's a chance. But to me, it makes me feel, if we pass this, and I hope we do, it makes me feel we've tried a step to make sure our people and their families, your families are still in Vietnam and places, people, other things, we've made a stand to say, listen, well, we don't think it's right. These things shouldn't happen. Thank you.
Yes, it concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, mover and seconder. Questions with notice nil, confidential items nil. Meeting is closed.
I googled this too late, but according to the